Oh, flippin' heck, Phil. It's episode 116 of the Warhammer 40,000 podcast that goes by the identity of Look Out, Sir. It's all Christmassy, Phil. What does that mean?
God blimey, governor.
God blimey, governor. What's the most expensive turkey in the shop there? Wah, wah. That's more penguin-esque, really, isn't it? Sort of gone off.
Christmas penguin, yes.
Yeah, potentially. Wah, wah. Although that was a very specific version of the penguin from...
The best version.
But no, what it actually means, Phil, is we're going to get copyright striked for this on YouTube because that Christmas music we use always gets flagged.
What, our actual Christmas music we use?
Yeah, our actual Christmas music always gets a little bit of a strike against us. Not in a sense that it's negative. We just can't monetize. Not that we do anyway, but...
But surely that Christmas music comes from the Google YouTube catalogue of copyright-free music. Or does it not?
I don't think it does, you know. I just think I just found it somewhere and then just...
Oh, that might be why. I thought it came from the library, where we get our normal music from.
Well, we got our normal music from the library. I didn't know about the library when I originally pulled the Christmas music, but I like it enough that I just tolerate it. But again, I don't...
You'll take the risk.
Exactly. Well, no, it never hits us especially hard. They just say, "Oh, you can't monetize it." And I'm like, well, I wasn't monetizing it anyway, so
fair enough.
It's what it is, isn't it? You know, but that's what it means. I mean, maybe I'll search the ad-free, or rather the licensing-free, domains of Google to see if I can find a version that won't hit me with a complaint.
Fair enough.
Do you know, Phil, when we used the song "The Girls, They All Love Me," which isn't even called that by Zig and Zag, we got tagged for that as well.
I'm not surprised.
I was surprised. I thought that song had probably long since lost its copyright luster.
More 15, 20 years ago? It's not that old.
Mate, come on now. It's more than that. It's like 25 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe you're right.
Almost certainly.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great little moment to include that song. But yeah, one of the things, though, as well, though, because I'm probably going to use some chart music for this episode, because we're going to be talking about what, Phil?
Oh, we are talking about our top 10 Space Marine chapters.
And Space Marines in the general sense. We have a bit of a, cathartic Space Marine convo, don't we?
Yeah. We talk about Space Marines.
Yeah, exactly. But one of the things that's interesting, though, right? Because I'll probably use the old BBC chart music for that. So we're going to get probably copyright struck for that. Then I'm going to use the Christmas music. We'll get copyright struck for that. So if I just throw in another song transitioning to the 5-star review, there'll be like 3 different copyright strikes, which basically means that they'll probably cancel each other out, right? So, they'll be fighting amongst themselves to,
or will they just take our channel down?
I mean, that is the game we play, right? I mean, it's risky business, but
well, because imagine we do all the effort to record the end of a show quiz, and then we can't put it up anywhere because you got rid of our channel. That's
true. That would be a bit of a blow to the system, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't think we need the BBC music, if I'm honest.
No, you're tired of that. You want something else. You're going to record me some appropriately Christmassly themed transitions for the Space Marine rundown.
If I've got time.
All right. I'll take that as a no. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right, cool. 5-star review.
Come on now, Timmy. You've got your orders. You've got to do it.
But I don't want to, sir.
You've got your orders. Now get up there, get over that trench, and get me that 5-star review, and get it back here right away.
Okay, sir.
This week's 5-star review comes from where, Phil?
Apple Podcasts of the Americas.
You are quite wrong, Philip. In this instance, I've decided to diversify, and I have opted to go to the pages of the book, of the face even, sorry. The faces of the page of the book, of the head, of the whatever. The metaverse. It's Facebook. Look out to his Facebook page. And it is a 5-star review left by an individual called Sam, surname withheld. Although, again, obviously, you can probably work out who it is if you really, really want to. But yeah. Sam has left us a 5-star review. Recommended 5 stars, as is, of course, a prerequisite of a 5-star review. Do you want to know what it says, Phil?
No, I'm good.
All right, fair enough.
5.
There you go. That was the
What?
5-star review, everyone. If you want to be like Sam and leave us a 5-star review, you can do so on Facebook or iTunes or anywhere else you can leave a 5-star review. But if you do leave it anywhere other than Facebook or iTunes, let us know because we're really bad at finding those reviews. So there you go. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to get on with the show now.
No, wait.
So,
I'm really curious. No, go on. I want you to tell me.
you sure? You
Yeah.
seemed really adamant that you didn't want to hear it.
Well, I thought we were just doing a bit, and you were going to.
Oh,
it
I
out,
see, I
but
see.
You took it so seriously. I was like,
I know. Almost like that itself was the bit. Anyway. So, a thoroughly entertaining dive into the great hobby of Warhammer 40k. Whilst not talking about Necrons nearly enough for my liking, this podcast provides a good overview of factions so I don't end up feeling out of depth with all the goings-on of the hobby. A fantastic look into the minds of Tryhard and his not-so-tryhard friend. Smiley face. Now, the question is, which one is the Tryhard one?
Well, it's obvious.
What, it's you, Phil?
Yes. I mean,
Exactly.
you've got to try hard with Krieg.
You do. I mean, if I'm, that's literally my only option is to try hard, even though it, doesn't yield any necessarily positive results.
Exactly.
I have to give it my all.
That's it.
I don't know necessarily how I feel about being called the try hard. I mean, admittedly, I suppose that is kind of the vibe that I give off, right?
Yes, I mean, if you embrace the Crusade more, maybe you would lose that image. But you won't play it. You won't play Crusade with me, Dan.
I'm sorry, mate. I'm sorry. It's not that I don't want to play Crusade with you. I just want it to be better.
But it is good. It is better.
I mean, you say these things to me, and I mean, I've tried to. I don't know. I've got limited capacity in my brain right now. There's so many rules in 40k. I just can't keep on top of it all. It's just it's mind numbing.
It's not that hard.
No, it's true. It's true. It doesn't really sound like the perspective of a tryhard person. Tryhard people love, waxing lyrical about, the realness of the game. I won by 6 points. And it's like, yeah, all right, whatever. Like, I'm sort of over tryhard 40k, but then I don't really like Crusade. I'm in a weird place, Phil. I'm just nostalgic now. I've become an old grumbly man.
Yeah, playing your 5th edition game of 40k.
I swear, mate. Are you so on Sunday before we probably won't get a chance to. Are you coming over here Saturday before we go down there Sunday?
No, I think Richie's going to pick me up.
Oh, okay. I see how it is. Fair enough. Well, anyway, so we could have played a 5th edition game, mate. You could have brought the Krieg. It would have been a lovely thing.
Well, I think there's time to do that over the Christmas holidays at some point.
That is true. We'll get around to it. We're going to make it a thing. A play date, Phil.
Exactly. We've definitely got to do Kill Team as well.
Oh, yeah, true. Because actually we've got to talk about that in the first episode of the new year, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we really should play some Kill Team.
It's long overdue, put it that way.
Oh, absolutely. Abso-flippin'-lutely. But anyway, thank you very much, Sam. Lovely 5-star review. Even if you did call Phil a tryhard and he's deeply offended by that assertion, but at the end of the day, you need to chill out, Phil. Be more casual. Stop trying to win at all costs, you filth.
Exactly. I mean,
yeah.
What's one to do?
Exactly. Anyway, thank you, Sam. It was a delight to read. Phil, elaborate.
Sam, thanks for listening to the show. Sorry we don't do enough Necron content. I feel like you're not the only person that's left us a review being a fan of Necron, so we've had to apologise several times. Maybe some episode we'll do a Necron top 10, and it will be, units of Necrons rather than factions, because there are no sub-factions really.
Well, there are.
Well,
it's just
the
they're not
dynasties,
nearly as...
yeah. There's not 10 of them.
What's your number one Necron unit, Phil?
What's the criteria?
Can you even remember one?
Well, huh? I don't know. Like maybe the new Catan Shard. That looks pretty cool.
I don't think they're even called Catan Shards anymore.
Oh, what are they called?
Just Catans.
Oh.
It's like the Deceiver or the Nightbringer or the Void Dragon.
I can't keep Void Dragon. That's the one. I like the Void.
You like the Void Dragon?
Yeah.
I quite like the Monolith these days.
I've not seen one in person, but I'm not sold. Not sold.
No, you don't think the Monolith's got chops?
They're cool, but they're just sort of very different from the old one, I think.
That's fair. That's fair. I quite like it though. It seems like a fun thing. And I like the new flailed ones.
Yeah. Flailed ones are always
The
good.
new flailed ones are cool.
Yeah, they're cool.
So there you go. Anyway, thank you so much, Sam. It's really appreciated. If you want to be like Sam and leave us a 5-star review, I've already done this bit. So let's just get on now with the rest of the show. Cheers to our patrons. Maybe buy some merch. Transitional noise. Hello and welcome, everybody, to this part of the podcast where myself and Phil are going to reevaluate a topic of conversation that we indulged in over a year ago. That being Space Marine chapters, and which one of those we believe to be the best. But why are we revisiting this topic, Phil? Why did we feel like doing a nice little top 10 rundown was a necessity at this stage in Warhammer 40,000?
Well, it's definitely not because Gene Stealing Cults and Custodes Codexes have been delayed and we've run out of ideas. It is actually because... I've said that is an actual fact. It is actually because, well, it's the end of the year. It's the end of a season. Like the Warhammer GT 2022 pack will be upon us soon to shake up the meta, get that tree, rattle it, and see what falls out. And before that happens, we're going to have a look back at the year. All the Space Marine supplements are now out with the new and shiny Black Templars hot off the press. So as part of that, we thought we would reevaluate the list, see if in hindsight we were correct about anything or a bit wrong. I think it's really an excuse for Dan to brag about that he chose Dark Angels and everyone had a go at him about it in the previous edition of this episode.
That is true. Although another reason why I think it's an important thing to revisit as much as anything else, and you did touch upon that, is that, yeah, at the end of the day, we've had a number of updates, not just obviously to the Marines, but to the broader Warhammer 40,000 army selection. There's a lot more kind of codexes out there. There's emerging, changing gameplay landscapes. And, you know, Marines are a really interesting army because they're very tactically flexible. But yeah, look, I mean, wanted to talk about where the new Black Templars sat within the current pecking order of things. Have they improved? Are they an army that myself and Phil believe are better? But also there's been a number of other minor, but in some instances quite significant updates to other forces with FAQs, erratas, as well as the various Warzone books changing various variables, as I love to say. So it's going to be interesting to just kind of revisit it. But also as well, the other thing that I thought was important is the first time we did this, I simply rattled off my top 10 listings, and yourself and Joe at the time effectively responded in accordance to my estimations. But it was very much, I'm delivering the top 10 list, and then you are debating it with me, but you yourself didn't really have an opportunity, or yourself and Joe in that example didn't have an opportunity to offer your own perspective on the top 10. So we're mixing it up. We don't have Joe here, regrettably. He was supposed to be in this episode, but he's apparently recording something with Liam Dempsey from, I don't even know the name of the channel. What is it called?
DZTV.
DZT, that thing. Sorry, I for some reason it all left my mind. What's that mean? Deployment Zone. That's the one, not Drop Zone. Deployment Zone. Anyway, he's doing that instead because he's a big time YouTube boy these days, isn't he, old Joe? He's a big deal, isn't he? He's a big deal.
Exactly. Not got time for little old us and our podcast.
No. Although he will be on the Big Fat Quiz of the Year, he's reassured me.
I mean, it doesn't seem like he deserves it, really, at this rate, if he's snubbing us the week before, days before, in fact, when we're going to be recording that episode.
That's all right. We're better without him, Phil. That's always what we're going to continue to say. But anyway, the point is that the good thing about the two-person format, though, is I can essentially, articulate where I think a Space Marine chapter is by going from numbers 10 to 1 in descending order, or ascending order, depending on whether you would count the numeral 1 as being the best in this instance, which I guess
Yes.
would be a ascension as opposed to a descension.
Yeah, no, that seems fair enough.
Even though numerically, I suppose it would be. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, it gets better as it goes along.
Do we have a quick rundown of what we said or what you said was the top 10 list this time last year?
No. Wouldn't that have been wise of me to have prepared? I'll tell you what I'll do, Phil. Through the magic of editing, I'm going to, at some point, do a rundown of what we said the last top 10 was. In fact, I'll do it right now. The White Scars are number 10. The Raven Guard, number 9. It's the Salamanders.
No.
Salamanders
I refuse
at number 8.
No.
It's the Iron Hands. Joe?
I'm gonna hang up this call in a minute.
The Flesh Terrors come in at number 6.
Cool. On to number 5.
It's the Ultramarines, everybody. Number 4, the Blood Angels. It's the Death Watch. It's the Space Wolves. It's the Dark Angels, everybody.
That's a funny way of saying Deathwing.
Favoritism central.
All right, now we know what the last time around top 10 was. We can effectively address our new version of events. Again, the difference being that we will go from numbers 10 to 1. I will say what my choice is, Phil will say his, and then we will debate that selection, noting that we will default to Phil. Or in fact, no, we defaulted to Phil last time. We're going to default to me, because I'm usually right when it comes to this sort of stuff. So we're going to abide by my list.
Fair enough. So let's do a caveat. So for this top 10, we're doing all the Space Marine chapters from the core Space Marine rulebook in terms of the chapter tactics that are listed. So Grey Knights aren't in there, for example, even though they're actually listed as Space Marines on the Games Workshop website, but they're not in the book. So they're not included. We're also not including any of the sort of rogue successor chapters that might appear in White Dwarfs and other supplements like that. So,
yeah, we're basically talking about the 13 chapters, either first founding or successor, found within the pages of Codex Space Marines, published in the year 2020 by Games Workshop and their various incineries. I can't say that word. It doesn't matter. Anyway, that's the general rule. So even though Phil would probably like to have put Minotaurs in there somewhere, he won't be. And equally, I might like to have put the Blood Ravens in there somewhere, but I won't be. The other thing to consider as well is when we are addressing this list, we are talking about the rules as they appear within this book, but also accounting for any supplements. But what we are not doing is we are not considering them as a template for successors or other kind of variables. So although certain overarching traits have benefits that when complemented by other successor abilities results in an even more powerful build, we will ignore that in favor of what they have natively. So for us, Ultramarines have +1 to their leadership and can leave combat and still shoot. They're not leaving combat and being able to charge afterwards. They've not got exploding 6s or are able to nullify mortal wounds on a 5+. It's standard Boggo Ultramarines as they are there. So obviously, please take that as a caveat, because I'm aware that certain overarching chapters may perform well in certain settings, but often that is because they are being used as a foundation for a successor chapter. Does that sound fair, Phil?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty spot on. And you know, we're not looking at this from a rule of cool or which one has the best lore or the favorite color scheme, unfortunately. But we're
because
just
if we were, the Dark Angels would win, obviously.
Yeah. Minotaurs.
Well, Minotaurs aren't on the list, man. If you were going to choose one, we may as well just address this from the outset. If you were going to choose a chapter from the 13 available here, based on the rule of cool, which one would you pick, you think?
Black Templars.
Black Templars every time.
Well, do you know what? Them or Death Watch. They are the two other choices that I was going to go for before I went for Minotaurs. Now, if I wasn't to do those, because neither of those are first founding. Let's see. I'm having a look at the list now.
Well, I mean, for me, it's definitely the Dark Angels. I love the dark secret. I love the kind of brooding intensity of the faction. I like that they all wear hoodies and they've got that really kind of evocative emo vibe. I think that's a super cool kind of aesthetic that I've always been really drawn to. If it wasn't Dark Angels, I'd say that probably next on the list for me of the 13 that are available here would probably be, bizarrely, the Flesh Tearers would probably be the one that I think is, from a fluff perspective, super cool.
They are pretty cool, actually.
Yeah. Well, I like Gabriel Seth and the fact that he essentially rescued the Flesh Tearers from relative extinction. The fact that they were effectively on the cusp of becoming, a traitor legion, that their bloodlust and, the intensity with which they felt the whole black rage effectively resulting in, them coming very, very close to being excommunicated by the Imperium. But the fact that Gabriel Seth was able to kind of salvage it and transform them into this vicious, fighting force that really threw itself into the thick of it when it came to all of the fights going on in the Imperium. And I also really loved the fact that Gabriel Seth and the Flesh Tearers were one of the few armies in early 8th edition Primaris 40k lore that really didn't like Primaris Marines. Gabriel Seth famously referring to them as Ultramarines in red armor, which again is another beautiful kind of anecdote that relates to a number of things that we've talked about in the past, such as painting Guilliman red, for example. But anyway, the point is that, Flesh Tearers, but Dark Angels. I love my Dark Angels.
I think I would go, and weirdly, this isn't from a lore perspective whatsoever, purely from a color scheme, would be White Scars, because I've got the supplement book because I've been playing them as my Minotaurs as successors. But every time I flip through the pages of the beautifully painted kind of white armor with like the red lightning bolt kind of stripes across either the vehicles or the infantry, I'm like, it's just such a stunning color scheme, and almost no one plays them, so it's quite rare when you actually see them. And I am a bit of a niche player in that respect. I do like something that isn't the mainstream sort of vibe. So looks wise, I think I would have to go with them. I quite like Iron Hands as well, the kind of concept of lots of dreadnoughts and vehicles.
Iron Hands are an interesting one as well, because they're obviously one of the first legions that had to get over the loss of their Primarch, which is a really interesting aspect. Now, obviously, everything in 40k, with the exception of obviously the Traitor Legions and now the Ultramarine chapter, has had to at some point come to terms with the relative sense of loss of their protogenitor, the Primarch. But the thing that was always really interesting about the Iron Hands is that they were one of the first where obviously Ferrus Manus was killed off very early on in the events of the Horus Heresy. And I feel like that's a really interesting aspect of their character and the way that they've kind of adapted to that kind of change of structure and the kind of cults and ideologies that were kind of born out of that whole sense of loss almost, which is really interesting. But the whole flesh is weak thing is pretty cool as well. Yeah,
they've got some really cool Forge World Terminator armor as well. I think it's Gorgon pattern. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's the Gorgon,
I stumbled across it recently when I was doing my research into true scale Terminators. So I was looking at all the different Terminator models and I was like, oh man, that one's really good. Like, old, but good.
It's cataphracti plate with like weird little kind of Mechanicus style accents, and then
is it? I thought it was Tartarus.
No, I'm pretty sure it's cataphracti because it's got the large shoulder pads as opposed to because Tartarus is more slick, more kind of more almost
the more mobile version of the two.
Yeah.
I'm just
I've
having
just
a
logged
look
on
at
to the
it
Games
now.
Workshop the Forge World website, but I am now trying to indicate what's a boat. So if you give me a moment, I will have a better frame of reference. Oh, thank God, it thinks I'm a human being. Okay, cool. We're in business. Where giants walk and customers get frustrated by a constant need to indicate what a boat is. Yeah, no, that's definitely. Oh, actually, that actually looks like it's closer to the modern
I
Terminator
was just
plate.
thinking
I
that
don't know what the
myself.
modern Terminator plate's actually called.
Indomitus, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks closer to that. It looks like a midway point, and it's not surprising because I'm pretty sure that the Iron Hands were the sorts of people that probably would be gaining access to some of those sort of technological advances with things like this legendary Terminator unit. But yeah, interesting. Yeah, interesting picks, Phil. So that's where we're at with it from a kind of broad fluff perspective. You know what our top 10 list was, or at least what I proposed. So I wonder how much it is altered. But I guess the first thing we need to do, Phil, is acknowledge that there are 13 chapters found within Codex Space Marines, and we are only going to talk about 10 of them in individual detail. So that means, Phil, that for each of us, there are 3 chapters that didn't make the cut.
Yeah.
So I reckon we should begin by talking about those.
None may stand against Space Marines.
All right then, Phil. This is our 13 to 10. Or not to 10, because 10 is in the thing. Our 13 to 11, as it were. Which of the chapters available here have you put in the bottom 13, 12, and 11th position?
So I've got Raven Guard. I've got
Okay.
Crimson Fists.
All right. Then.
And I've got Salamanders.
Oh, okay.
Controversial.
Interesting. So I have in 13th position the Raven Guard.
Oh.
I have in 12th position the Crimson Fists.
Oh my God.
And in 11th position, I have put the Flesh Tearers.
The Flesh Tearers were so close to going into the bottom.
Well, don't spoil your list yet, Phil, because
No
you know we're going to go into it. But I think the only point of difference between the two of us at this point is obviously the Salamanders and the Flesh Tearers, right? Because we're pretty universally of the opinion that Raven Guard, Crimson Fist belong here. We have altered on Salamanders and Flesh Tearers, and that, I mean, you know, I'm intrigued by how Salamanders have ended up in your bottom section. But let's start by just briefly talking about why we both kind of feel like Raven Guard are at the bottom. For me, my reason for Raven Guard is that I think as an army, they really struggle to come into their own in the way the game is currently played. And I think, you know, ultimately, yes, they've got a number of mobility-based abilities, and they've got a number of character-orientated, killing abilities. So they are very, very good headhunters. But more often than not, it feels to me that the kind of character class in 40k 9th edition are becoming increasingly durable or having increasingly more flexibility and possibilities to defend themselves from that kind of pressure, either through transport vehicles or just the density of terrain that people are favoring nowadays. It's really difficult to use sniper type characters in 40k 9th edition. But more so than anything else, I think as well, it's that I think there are chapters that do what Raven Guard want to do better than Raven Guard do. And I think that ability to essentially get cover saves in the open up to a distance and then get dense cover when in cover up to an even more increasing distance. It's just, you know, with the board sizes, everything else, it just feels a little bit lackluster. And also as well, they're a chapter with so little in the way of extra options. You know, they are essentially Codex Astartes with one character, you know? Like, that's literally it. It's that and Shrike.
Yes, yeah, and I think that would be a general theme for this list. I think, or in general, like if you've got more units that come with your codex supplement, then you're gonna end up being a slightly more powerful Space Marine chapter overall, I think. And yeah, all your points are completely valid. I also think so because they've got the ability to ignore the Lookout Serral, don't they?
They've got abilities that effectively buff their character killing potential. Yeah, so their native abilities are all built around, being far away and benefiting from kind of cover. But then they've also got within their supplements abilities that make them, very good at attacking characters, but also make them quite aggressive. And that's always been the weird thing about the Raven Guard is they're archetypally, opposed, I suppose. They have a skill set in terms of their core kind of identity that massively differentiates from what their supplement essentially wants them to kind of lean into. They're much more close quarters and much more aggressive than their core abilities might indicate. And perhaps with some of the successor, chapter types or chapter tactics, they could be a pretty reasonable chapter, but boilerplate vanilla Raven Guard, I think, really, really struggle. Even though I've seen some interesting builds with them over the years, and I've seen people do some fun stuff with, all the various kind of aggressive plays that people make with aggressors and Vanguard vets and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, and again, I think the thing we also want to say at these points is I accept that someone will be out there who is playing Raven Guard and winning events. Like, I know that will be the case because Space Marines are still good, even in their arguably worse form. They are still a really, really viable army. It's just that point of difference. They've got a character who's quite one-dimensional, who, in all honesty, isn't really as good as, some of the more bog standard HQ selections, and they've got a set of skills that are in many ways superseded by other chapters, is my vibe. But anyway, sorry, Phil, please continue if you've got any other points on that.
No, it was only that they're obviously specialized at killing characters, but so many things can nullify them doing it. So obviously you've got to look out Serral, which I'm sure they have ways of take a drink, everyone. We've mentioned the show. But also, so you have things like I want to say it's the not Vanguard vets. It's the Honor Guard, which can ignore the Lookout Sir rule. So there's we don't really have a word for it. There's just a rule that basically overrides the Lookout Sir rule, so you can't target them.
Bodyguard is what it's called.
Oh, Bodyguard, yeah. I'm not with on the trend of what the words are. So
remember.
So the Bodyguard rule obviously is something that's going to really impact on Raven Guard characters. I mean, potentially that Bodyguard rule is going to change at some point because it seems to be being used a lot more and abused a lot more in the tournament scene. So I wouldn't be surprised if it changes in some fashion.
Yeah, I hope so, because it is a very, very strong rule, especially with the way that the game is played most of the time now with terrain placement and so on. So Raven Guard are at our bottom. Next down is Crimson Fists. Now, Crimson Fists is an interesting one because essentially, for me anyway, in the last list that we did, I think I put Crimson Fists dead last. I think they were my bottom tier choice. Now I think they're slightly better because I've gained a greater appreciation for some of the options that the broader Imperial Fist army can do. And we'll get to that when we talk about Imperial Fists at some point in the future. But I think Crimson Fists, for me anyway, they're just worse version. They're a worse version of the Imperial Fists with one character. And I think that's just where I'm at with it. They're fine. But, again, I'm just not that into them. I think they really struggle to be viable. I mean, what's your thought process on it, Phil?
Yeah, because their rule is all about, isn't it, killing people or shooting at people when it's like double or double.
5 more models than them, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a tricky one to pull off. I think despite all of Games Workshop efforts to make like a bit of a horde meta, encourage armies to have bigger squad sizes, like Sisters can now go up to 20. They still want orcs to have tons of models. Despite all of that, MSU, multiple small units, is still the most optimized and efficient way of playing the game. Purely, I think, because of the way people are still scared of the blast rule, for example. Will that change maybe in the future based on like missions and stuff? Maybe, but until that swing happens, they're really struggling to benefit basically from those their core benefit basically. And against a lot of armies like Custodes, they never get it because they never have squad sizes more than 3 and 5 probably, even though they can go higher. And maybe when their codex comes out, there'd be reasons to encourage them to go up to larger squad sizes. But it feels like for the general part, their core special rule just isn't getting as much use than some of the other chapters.
Well, the thing that's absurd about it is that they specifically specify that a vehicle model counts as 5 models, which essentially means if you're one model firing at a vehicle, you still don't gain the benefit of this because it needs to be 5 or more.
Yeah, it needs to be count as 5 plus its actual model. But even then,
it's only 6.
Yeah, but even then, it's only one person has to be shooting at it to get the benefit. It's like just make it like count as 10 or something.
Yes. Yeah, if it counted as 10, I could see it. You know what I would have loved to have seen for the Crimson Fist is something that kind of illustrated that more evocative aspect of their personality through the artwork. Because all the Crimson Fist artwork, that gorgeous, famous Rogue Trader artwork of the Crimson Fist, is that defiant last stand where they're obviously being butchered by various assailants. I can't remember what they're in a fight against. Probably orcs. Yeah. I would have loved to have seen. There was an old Mechanicus faction rule where you rolled a d6 when a model was on its last wound. So when it was about to lose its last wound. So obviously when this mini is dropped to 0 wounds, you roll 1d6 for that unit, and that was if it was fleeing or just dying. And if you rolled a 6, it stayed. And I think that would have been a really nice chapter tactic to put on them. So give them like bolter drill and that 1 in 6 chance of not dying, just to add to their durability. Now, obviously, that's a very, very potentially strong rule to give them, but I think it would probably fit their personality quite well. But I acknowledge that it probably would be a bit too powerful almost, because I think that worked in the case of Mechanicus because you probably didn't necessarily put it on anything too ridiculous, although potentially robots and things.
Is it just going to work in this example on the very last man that's alive in a squad and he's got 1 in 6 chance of not dying? Basically.
No, so like every model, but it's 1 dice roll. So like an Iron Hand, if you did 2 damage to an Iron Hand, you roll 2d6, and if you roll 1/6, it'd be alive on 1 wound. In this example, if you did 2 damage to what would be this version of a Crimson Fist, you roll 1d6, and if you roll a 6, it stays on 1 wound. But if you don't roll a 6 on 1 dice...
Oh, okay. I'm sure Yarrick has a rule like that when he's down to his last wound. Yeah.
Something that depicts that would have probably been cool. Or maybe something like, I don't know. I mean, to be fair, if they gave them this, it would be pointless anyway, but it'd be like, if they're reduced to half strength, they become fearless.
Yeah, or like they get +1 to their combat attrition test instead of -1, or lots of mechanics around being under half strength would be actually really cool. So effectively, the weaker they're doing, the stronger they get.
Yes, yeah. But there you go. I mean, I love the Crimson Fists from a lore and from a aesthetic perspective. They are a cool army.
Oh yeah,
because obviously they've just had so much iconic artwork done of them. But yeah, it pains me that they're as far down the pecking order as they are. But
they are.
And then lastly for you, Phil, it's the Sallies. So I mean, I've got salamanders in my top 10. So I guess we could potentially talk about those extensively when we get to salamanders in that top 10 listing, unless that's going to massively upset the balance here, because I've obviously got flesh tearers. So seemingly there's going to come a time where you tell me flesh tearer and I tell you something else.
Well, should we discuss flesh tearers first of all? Because it's on your list, and we said we would default to you.
Let's do it that way, and then we'll see what happens when we get into the top 10, I guess. Let's see how it goes. So, yeah, Flesh Tearers for me, the reason why I've put Flesh Tearers at number 11, and I suppose this might become more intriguing when you see the context of where I put Blood Angels. And obviously, when I'm given the opportunity, I will talk about Blood Angels. But I think the thing is, the difference with Flesh Tearers and Blood Angels is Flesh Tearers, first of all, benefit from getting bucket loads of choices because they're still Blood Angels. They've still got Librarian Dreadnoughts. They've still got Sanguinary Guard. They've still got Death Company, Primaris Death Company, Death Company Dreadnoughts, Furioso Dreadnoughts, Bowl Predators. You know, these guys have got everything a Blood Angel army has access to, except the Blood Angels range of special characters, except the Blood Angel rules, which is essentially for the Flesh Tearers. If that model's unit made a charge move, was charged, or performed heroic intervention this turn, add 1 to the attack's wound roll. Obviously, that is pretty significant. But on an unmodified wound roll of 6, improve the armor penetration characteristics of that attack by 1. This is cumulative with bonuses from the Assault Doctrine. It's pretty It's one of those sort of rules where it's like, cool, I'm getting an additional minus. Sure, it can make a difference. Often I forget to trigger those abilities. And I think, you know, obviously being able to add 1 to wound is cool, but I would far sooner have that in conjunction with the additional range to my charges and my advances, because these kind of armies archetypally will rely on, you know, really aggressive movement. And that seems to be one of the things that the Blood Angel army really wants to lean into. And simultaneously, that clearly is a very similar kind of archetype that the Flesh Tearers want to lean into as well. But they just don't do it as well as Blood Angels. And then the lack of characters, which, you know, the Blood Angels have 5 characters. They've got Dante, Mephiston, Lamates, Astaroth, Tycho, Brother Corbulo. They've got like 6 you know, unique HQ choices, some of which are very good. And they've got the Sanguinor as well. There you go, 7. Forgot about the Sanguinor. And these guys have got Gabriel Seth. And Gabriel Seth, unfortunately, would be good, but he doesn't have a jump pack. I mean, he's good, but he'd be better if he had a jump pack. So that's where I'm at with the Flesh Tearers. I mean, what's your vibe on the Flesh Tearers, Phil? I mean, do you want to just say where the Flesh Tearers are on your list, and then we can compare and contrast?
Yeah, so I put them at number 10. So
okay, so not too far. Then.
No, I think originally I had them at the bottom, and then I swapped it around purely because Lawrence from Tabletop Tactics has a Flesh Tearer army, and he knows his stuff. Like, they're not a bad army when he runs them, and his army, firstly, looks gorgeous. Secondly, can be pretty devastating. So for that reason, I bumped it up just a little bit because I know they're not that bad. They can't be at the bottom. Almost for that reason. They
can't be at the bottom for sure.
But you're right. Yeah, as you say, the chapter ability, like the Blood Angel one, is just better and works for what they're trying to do for their army overall. But you're right. I just don't think they're good, but not great.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Flesh Tearers are good. Like, and again, I continue to go back to it. The margins between the bottom and the top of I'd say the margins between last place and third place when talking about Space Marines is pretty tight. The problem Space Marines have, you know, no spoilers, but the problem Space Marines have is the margins between like the worst chapter and the 4th chapter are really tight. But the top 3 are so flipping good. They sort of eclipse everything else, in my opinion. And that's the thing, like, you know, it really is the little things with the Flesh Tearers. It's the fact they've got one character and he's not that remarkable because he lacks mobility. It's the fact they themselves have that mobility issue, even though you can obviously take relics and things to complement that. But again, you've got to spend CP to get the best relics, because all the best Blood Angel relics are Blood Angel relics. They're not, Flesh Terror relics. They're Blood Angel relics. So you've got to pay the CP to take the relics of Baal to get your +2 movement on the banner. Because I believe the angel banner of +2 movement is a Blood Angel specific thing. Loads of it is like Blood Angel specific relics that you're going to want when you're exploring your build. So, they'll hoover up CP in order to have things that you would have just got if you took a Blood Angel army. And you're not going to really prioritize Gabriel Seth as much as he is a flipping awesome character in the lore, and as much as he is on paper a really good, sledgehammer unit. He just doesn't have the movement. So, and that's my vibe on Flesh Terrors, mate. I mean, do you have any more to say on the topic other than just Lawrence thinks they're good, so they're okay in my books?
Well, it wasn't quite that, but it influenced it to a small degree. But you're right. No, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there, really.
No, nice, mate. All right, fine. So we understand that
Salamanders.
Salamanders were your number 11. Yeah. But I guess now, before we talk about that, we're going to just get into the proper top 10, right?
Let's do it.
Because clearly somewhere in that top 10 is Salamanders for me. So I guess we'll... and we know where Flesh Terrors are. So I guess whatever the next one is, it's going to be whatever I've picked, essentially. Because we've just covered Flesh Terrors. Yeah. So let's see how it goes as we move on to the first of the top 10. Number 10.
They will not escape our holy fire.
So for number 10, Phil, what did you pick? Oh, wait, we already know. Flesh Terrors.
Yes, that's it.
Magical. Well, you chose Salamanders for your number 11, right?
Yep, that's right.
So it probably won't surprise you to hear that Imperial Fists are my number 10. Woo! So clearly Imperial Fists are a bit higher up for you, Phil. I mean, dare you tell me where they feature?
How high do you think I could go with Imperial Fists?
You can't have put them in the top half, could you?
I put them number 9.
Number 9.
So
okay, that seems fair.
And do you know why? I just couldn't face to put them in number 10. Like
no.
They don't really deserve to be in number 10. And my reason why is so that they've got lots of rules that ignore cover. Like we played a game against Richie on an old school board on like a couple of weekends ago. They're really good. Like when you're not playing like really terrain dense boards, and when you're not really playing a game on the terrain, you're playing a game behind the terrain to get the obscuring rules. If you're kind of doing a more traditional sort of board where you actually want to be in the cover, for example, then Imperial Fists are really good because Imperial Fists can be like, cool, I can shoot you and you're not going to get any cover saves. It's only when you have ruins that have, line of sight blocking walls on them, or you're, egregiously using the obscuring rule everywhere. So they're not actually benefiting from the terrain. Then actually, yeah, I think they can be a lot better. It's a bit like the Raven Guard have a similar issue where the current sort of format for terrain and terrain density makes Raven Guard not as good. And I think the same applies for Imperial Fists. I think they should be better than they currently are, sadly.
I think the thing that's really interesting is the way that Games Workshop effectively balanced the Imperial Fist and by extension Crimson Fist and other Imperial Fist successors, not including Black Templars, obviously, but other Imperial Fist successors, Super Doctrine. So when they're in the Devastator Doctrine, they used to get +1 damage on their weapons, and it was all heavy weapons before. Whereas now it is weapons with strength 7 or above. And the problem is that their ability to add extra shots to bolter weapons obviously doesn't almost ever benefit from the extra damage from strength 7, because most bolter weapons are either strength 4 or strength 5. There might be a variant of bolter out there somewhere that's strength 6. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Maybe mega bolts on a tank or plane of some Forge World description meets that criteria. But the point is that yeah, the problem with the Imperial Fists is that their Super Doctrine is let down by the fact that they want to synergize into bolt guns. So in a way, unless you're really building around that and adding in a few units that benefit from it, Eliminators with the las fusils is one that Richie frequents and certainly is pretty meaningful in the opening turns when those las fusils are doing, I think, 4 damage when buffed. I think they're 3 damage natively, so being able to do 4 damage turn 1 is pretty meaningful. Obviously, you want to be looking at things like suppressors with their auto cannons. Those are strength 7. Various missile launchers, las cannons. These weapons obviously are strength 7 or greater. But the problem is with that is that you're effectively putting weapons on units that are only going to really be good turn 1. Although plasma, I suppose, you could really roll into some plasma. Although I believe with the with the Imperial Fist Super Doctrine, it still only affects heavy weapons. It doesn't just need to be a strength 7 weapon. It just has to be a heavy weapon.
Well, you could
7.
do heavy plasma, the plasma incinerators.
Yes.
So they're heavy.
Yes. Yeah, on the Hellblasters, right? So, yeah, or the plasma cannons. So there is ways that you can do it, but the problem is that for 4 turns of the game, you're not benefiting from that style of build.
Well, yeah,
again,
I guess there's ways to shift something to the Devastator Doctrine again, but that always costs you CP pretty much, so that is a hindrance.
They've got some good relics and things though, the Imperial Fist. The Eye of Hypnoth is pretty cool. It makes you can make a lieutenant a captain effectively, or I think you can make a captain a lieutenant rather, simultaneously, so you could be re-rolling ones to hit and re-rolling ones to wound. They've got some really interesting stratagems. Pain as a lesson to give them the 6-up feel no pain, or the 6-up shrug, or whatever you want to call it. They can turn their bolt guns into pistols, which can be pretty devastating if you've charged into a unit of Centurions, for example, and then all of a sudden all of those heavy bolters become heavy bolt pistols.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty good. There's some real weird stuff that Richie does with Reavers that I genuinely think is strong. Like Richie's really leaned into the Reaver build really interestingly, and he's created some synergies and things that you just wouldn't think about with the Reavers. So he's mostly running them with the bolt carbines, but then he's using that stratagem to turn those bolt carbines into pistols, and then using that in conjunction with the heavy bolt pistols that they have. And then the whole thing just gets a little bit leery when the amount of firepower that Reaver squad is all of a sudden throwing at you, noting that any 6s to hit result in an extra hit. So he can really pump out the damage with those guys quite intriguingly. And he loves putting some mad pistol on his lieutenant. I keep forgetting what it's called, but it's some special Imperial Fist pistol that does crazy damage.
Yes, I can't remember what it's called, but as he kept saying to me, I'm just shooting power swords at you, basically, because it's crazy minus lots of damage.
I think as well, though, there's units that Imperial Fist synergize with really well that may not get a huge amount of exposure in the game overall, but I think that they do well with things like the Landspeeder Storm, which is a strong unit. You take a Landspeeder Storm, you chuck a few scouts in there with bolt guns and heavy bolter. You have that thing flying around with its own heavy bolter, doing some pretty reasonable denials, but also, and when I say denials, I mean denying objectives as opposed to denying psychic powers. But you can have that unit flying around. I think there's some play in scout bikes. I think that I've often said that, and I think the Imperial Fists have got some potential to unlock some opportunities with those guys. I think there's just a lot of stuff, like just Outriders, the Centurion squads. Obviously, they do very well with Centurions. Some of the other tank builds that you can kind of pivot around. There's some interesting stuff. I mean, again, the problem is with tanks in Space Marines at the moment is they are still way too expensive. So it's difficult to justify taking a Gladiator. But if you were going to take a Gladiator, I think Imperial Fist could do some good stuff with it. Same thing with the Storm Speeders or even just regular Land Speeders. I think there's a lot of creative possibilities for Imperial Fists, for sure. But they fall down on options. They've got two characters, Lysander and
Tor
I'm forgetting
Garradon.
Tor Garradon. Thank you. So they got Lysander and Tor Garradon. And beyond that, they're just Index Astartes Space Marines or Codex Astartes Space Marines. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I like Imperial Fists, and it's been really interesting watching Richie do some shenanigans with them. But I think, yeah, overall, it's reasonable to assert that they need to be low down, because, yeah, we can't sit here and pretend that they're as good as some of the other Space Marine options that are out there. As much as I still like them, I mean, that's the common thread of all of this. I love all the flavors of Space Marines.
I do really like Imperial Fists. I sort of wish they were just a bit higher up. They've got a really nice archetype to them. But as you say, I think you've got to play into their strengths is to want to try and take bolters, but then that doesn't synergize with some of the other rules, as you were saying. But I don't mind that. I don't mind having choice. Like, I don't want an army to be a meme. Like, I don't want Krieg to be shovels, and I don't want fists to be bolters. And it's like, yeah, the rules maybe are deliberately designed to not synergize because, yeah, Space Marines that like bolters also like las cannons and multi-melters and other weapons too. You shouldn't just be like, I'm just taking bolters and that's my one thing. It's like Blood Angels aren't just close combat army.
Totally agree.
That they're famous for having the Bold Predator tank. It's like they do shooting as well. Like all these armies, and this is the one thing I really liked about the Horus Heresy stuff is it's like you can take any kind of niche concept of I'm going to be a drop pod assault army because that's what I'm Sons of Horus, that's what they're famous for. So like, cool, but they also take Land Raiders and Rhinos, and they're just a generic Space Marine army at the end of the day that have all of these options, even if they do have like a famous archetype that pigeonholes them into one thing. Like, it shouldn't pigeonhole them into it. It's just a stereotype, really. So you don't have to play into that if you don't want to. They should be able to have the full remit of the full access to the armory and the units and stuff like that.
And I totally agree with that, mate. I think there are some units that really benefit from the Imperial Fist rules. I think things like aggressors could be really interesting because you could definitely utilize the Boltstorm gauntlets, but you still got that close combat punch. I think, why not run Vanguard vets? Why not run Blade Guard vets in this army? Like, yeah, of course. Like, you should add that to your Imperial Fist army because those units are cool regardless of what faction you are. And there's definite reasons why Imperial Fist would deploy those strategies. It's just that, again, I think when you try and talk about this stuff competitively, which I apologize if that is the kind of general vein of this, but we had to come up with some methodology for differentiating, and that seemed to be the way we went. When you talk about the optimization and things that make things optimal, you do want to lean into, units which maximize the potential of these things. But I agree, like, I have no issue running all manner of things with Blood Angels. I like running a Deradeo in my Blood Angel army because it's fun. It's got a missile launcher and autocannons, and it's terrible, but it's a Deradeo, and I love it. So I chuck it in there, or Deradio, or however you're supposed to pronounce the thing. But the tugboat, dreadnought. But it's the thing. It's like I would run a Bold Predator, but I haven't assembled it yet. I do need to get around to doing that at some point. But yeah, you can do some cool stuff with Imperial Fists, and I think there's a thing. I think there is a build in because this is the thing that's so exciting about Space Marines and why people just keep coming back to them is that there is so much possibility. You could come up with a mad Imperial Fist build. You could be like, here is 100 heavy intercessors, and all of a sudden people be like, oh, hello, like this is a bit Larry.
Yeah.
So there is ways that you can make these guys great. It's just that no one's really figured it out yet, and I struggle to see where that potential is. But also, let's be real. By the time you've cracked the code and come up with an amazing Imperial Fist list based on this, the new Space Marine Codex is going to be out. So it's sort of, we're at that point now where we're at wasted effort. If you're going to come up with something, do it within the first 6 months, because there's a Space Marine Codex. Average release of Space Marine Codex at the moment, was it twice every 3 years? So it's like one every year and a half.
Yeah, I think has there not been like one a year for the last 2 years? But then there wasn't one for a while before that.
Yeah, so there was the one at the start of 8th edition, so 2017. Then there was 2019. Then there was 2020. There wasn't one this year. There is definitely going to be one next year. Definitely.
So pretty much
That's
every 2 years then. One every 2 years.
Like I guarantee, I am very confident that a Space Marine Codex will come out next year. And if it's not a Space Marine Codex, a intense Space Marine supplement will be coming out next year because Games Workshop don't have AOS and they don't have a 40k release. So because 10th edition is going to come 2023. So, what else pads the books other than maybe Horus Heresy? I suppose they could lean into Heresy.
Well, yeah, I think that'll be their big release next year. But that is for another episode.
The next episode, in fact. But for this one, I guess we've talked about Imperial Fist adequately. You had in your number 10 position the Flesh Terrors. Yeah. So we are relatively up to speed, although we have still got to find where I've put Salamanders and then also what sits in your number 9 position, which we already know. I've just reminded myself it's Imperial Fists. God, it's all working out for the best. So let's see what I think is number 9. Number 9.
We shall be the end of you!
So yeah, number 9, Salamanders for me. Imperial Fists for Phil, right?
Yeah.
So now we could talk about Salamanders. I could say what I'm going to say about them being number 9, but I'm more interested in hearing about why Phil thinks they're number 11.
It's like, who are they? Like,
who are they?
Well, when was the last time?
Who is she? Who is she?
Basically, and this is the thing that almost the ones that didn't make the cut, right? You never see them. Like, I actually think Salamanders should be higher. In fact, when we did the last episode, I'm sure we rated them much higher. But it's like they just lean into Flamers and Melters, which are both all right. But I just don't think they're that great from what they do. They're very shooty, I guess. They're not really good in combat more than anything else. They don't have any special units like some of the other ones. They've got one Primaris character, and have they got any old school Firstborn characters?
Yeah, they've got Vulcan.
Oh yeah, of course. But I'm
Vulcan Heston. That's it. Not named after the celebrity chef.
No, he's going to whip you up a mean Christmas dessert.
Assuming you shop at Waitrose, though.
Yes,
that's where Heston hangs out. That's why Vulcan Heston is green to match the corporate branding of Waitrose.
Brilliant.
Although I suppose that's also Asda colours as well, isn't it?
Could be, yeah.
It depends on the hue. Anyway, yeah. So there's Vulcan Heston, who is the original
chef,
Firstborn guy, and then there is Agrax Agatone, who is the recent paint. Yeah, absolutely, the paint made manifest. So yeah, Agrax is a pretty tidy character, to be fair, though.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, no, you were explaining. Please tell me more.
Well, yeah, it's just in general, I think if they were better, we would see them more about. And I know people obviously do collect them and do play them. It's been a long time since I've seen one on the tabletop when we've gone to events and stuff. Yeah, I just think, their ability to get their rerolls on a unit was better, and then it got toned down. I can't remember if that was in an FAQ or just in the latest in that last book in comparison to the previous Space Marine Codex.
Yeah, so they suffered a lot with a number of changes that were introduced in the new Marine decks. So they benefited a lot from the double shooting aggressor, for example. That was one of the things that they really enjoyed, because you could obviously get the flamer aggressor and then have it coming down and doing crazy amounts of stuff. And, look, they've got loads of cool stratagems and upgrades and mad things. They're easily the best assault terminators in town. Well, Well, maybe they're not. Again, that's the funny thing. They're maybe not, but they are a good assault terminator.
And I think
because
the flamers going up in range in 9th edition has really obviously helped them. But I think that isn't enough, really.
Well, because this is the thing, right? Their abilities are their units get to reroll 1 wound roll, which is not insignificant depending on what units you're utilizing. Does mean that you're not necessarily guaranteed to hit with certain weapons, because before you could reroll the hit roll and the wound roll, whereas now you're just rerolling the wound roll. But there are some units that are really well suited to them. Obviously, the Flamestorm Gauntlet aggressors, the Eradicators. They're an army that really loves heavy armor, be that the Gravis plate or Terminator plate. I think they really lean in very well to that. And they've got a number of stratagems that are really interesting. They've got the weird one where they can basically act as a bodyguard effectively. So you can take a big hulking unit of assault terminators with storm shields and have them castle up around certain units, and those become untargetable. They've got all the flamer stuff that they lean into, so they get loads of damage out of their flame weapons.
And they've got ones that can do like maximum number of shots and stuff as well. So on Flamestorm aggressors would be crazy.
Oh yeah, and they've got like another one where you can kind of amplify one of the flamers, and it does like crazy amounts of damage. It used to be that the aggressor sergeant used to be one of the most terrifying models in the game, because it just be like, I've got all these flamers and they're doing all these mortal wounds and blah, and it was like literally like one aggressor with this particular kind of loadout could take down an Imperial Knight on its own, which it can still theoretically do. It's just, can he get there? That's one of the core kind of problems. And again, I say he can theoretically do it. He can't do it anymore because he can't double shoot anymore. And I think that's the thing is, like, a lot of their stratagems are built around the old Space Marine Codex. It's stuff like, oh, this unit now counts as remaining stationary, which used to be like super awesome for aggressors, because you'd be like, cool, I'm going to advance this unit of aggressors, and then I'll pay the CP, and now they remain stationary, and then I'm going to flame you, and I'm going to pop this stratagem to do the maximum amount of shots, and I'm going to give him this war gear, so he's going to do all these mortal wounds. And you had like aggressor units that would just wreck face. But now it's like, meh, not really. I think the sweet spot for the Salamanders was in the between 9th edition dropping and the Space Marine Codex coming out. Because if you remember, in the early moments of 9th edition, we had rules for Eradicators because they came in the box set. And everyone was falling over themselves to mail order or to eBay order as many Eradicators as they could early doors with Salamanders, because the double shooting Eradicators and the double shooting Flamestorm Gauntlet aggressors were amazing as a combination. Like, the whole thing was crazy. But the reality is the new codex dropped, the prices, or rather the points costs of those models went up, and they fell down a bit. But for me, I think of all the Primaris characters that they released in Wave 2 of the Space Marines in 2019, I think Adrax Agatone is probably number 3 of those characters. I think number 1 was Calgar. I think number 2, and technically Calgar didn't come in Wave 2. He technically predates Wave 2. He came in midway through Wave 1. So he came out in like 2018, if I remember, because he came as part of what was that big deal 2 years ago? That now I can't even remember the Vigilus. Yeah, so he came in Vigilus, and then in 2019 they dropped Tigerius, and Tigerius is so ridiculous. But
is
Adrax
Tigerius the Dark Angels one?
No, he's the chief librarian of the.
Ultramarines. Yeah,
Ultramarines.
sorry.
Yeah. But Agatone's good. Like, Agatone is no joke when it comes to close combat. If you can get him into a fight, he will mess people up. He's legit when it comes to brawling. He just doesn't have much else in the way of utility. He's a bit of a blunt instrument, I suppose. But again, he does what he does really well. But yeah, my vibe on Salamanders is I think they're number 9 because I think they've just got some good options. I think they've got some good durability. I think they're better than Imperial Fists. But I agree with you that not very many people are running them at the moment. And I think a lot of that is to do with the fact that the internet has decided that the optimal way to run Space Marines is with certain successor tactics. And I think the problem is with Salamanders is the Salamander skill set just doesn't complement what people say is the top tier stuff, with the exception of the Radicators and the attack bikes, for example. But the point is that I think Salamanders have got some play, and I think there are some interesting builds that could be in there. But again, I think we're at that point where it's like, unless you really, really want to run Salamanders for the next 6 months, I'd be cagey about over-investing in them as a new force right now. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a general problem, especially when you're talking about the competitive scene, in terms of there's a real focus on close combat being the way to get stuff done, and partly that's terrain, partly that's, I don't know, it's almost the meta of the terrain for the game that they want. So therefore, the more shooting orientated chapters are going down the list. Basically, that's why Imperial Fists is low, Crimson Fists is low, and that's why sort of Salamanders is going to be down there as well, because they don't really have anything for the close combat other than the generic Space Marine units. If there was a chapter tactic that buffed both, they'd probably be a bit higher up.
I think the other thing that lets them down, though, is the army wants to synergize with the durable, heavy units. And the problem is with the durable, heavy units is they're slow. Couple with that, with the fact that they've got short-range weapons on them. Because, again, the Flamestorm Gauntlets, range 12. The Melter Guns, range 24, maybe 12. For a Melter Gun, it's definitely 12. But for the Melter Guns on the Eradicators, I think they might actually be 18. But even then, they're not crazy long range. So they are let down by that. One of the interesting things you can do with Salamanders, though, is take a Red Scorpion Salamanders list, and then you can buff the Dreadnought character guy, Carob Cullen, with a bunch of mad Salamanders things. Make him toughness 9, and when he dies, you can resurrect him. It's quite fun.
Isn't that what Richie used to do?
Yes, yeah. I'm basically quoting Richie madness when it comes to a lot of this stuff. Richie is the king of experimental Space Marine nonsense, isn't he?
He's got some good stuff up his sleeves, that's for sure.
He's got some interesting builds. He's always pushing the boat out. One of these days he'll win something. Oh, love you really, Richie. Let's talk about what our number 8s are. Number 8. All right then, Phil. We're in the round now where I don't know what you've picked and you don't know what I've picked. But I want to hear you first, mate. Number 8.
Number 8
what you got?
Is Ultramarines.
Holy cow. I've gone with White Scars.
How dare you?
How dare you? Tell me, Phil, and again, I know we said we were going to default to me. I know we said that. But I'm more interested in this moment in hearing why you believe the Ultramarines to be number 8. I'm so flabbergasted by you choosing them as number 8.
Really?
That I'm happy. I'm happy to, forego my future Ultramarine spiel in favor of you telling me why you think they are number 8.
Well, so here's the thing: when we're now getting into the top 8, it's actually hard to fit everything into the top 5. Like, it's, as you're saying, like, there's so many good ones in there. It's hard to, you can't fit them all in. It's not a clown car, basically. There's not room for everyone at the top spot. So unfortunately, and I've played against Ultramarines quite a bit. Like Shaggy from SN Battle Reports, he's got a great Ultramarines army. I think they're good. I think the characters are what elevates them. I think overall, though, they're just a good, the generic, dare I say, chapter. If it wasn't for the characters, I bet you wouldn't rate them as highly as you probably rated them.
I mean, that's a reasonable assertion, my friend. That's a reasonable assertion. I guess because we did say we were going to default to me throughout this process, and I don't have any idea where you've put White Scars in the pecking order. I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to give my counter arguments when we find where Ultramarines sit for me, obviously higher than when you've put them. But let's talk about White Scars. So White Scars is kind of your spiritual home, Phil, because they are the chapter by which you have chosen to identify your Minotaurs as. Which is intriguing to me as well, though, Phil, because I love the fact that you're so rigid in your decision to be like, no, my Minotaurs are White Scars. I mean, one of the beautiful benefits of what you've done with a Minotaur army is you make it whatever you want it to be. But you always say, no, it's a White Scars army. That's what it is.
Well,
You never deviate.
one
Why?
Because I'm cheap. I don't want to buy another supplement book.
Fair enough. I mean, that's the best answer you've ever given me to that question.
I mean, that is one of them. But also, I really love the play style of the White Scars, and I feel like, and I'm doing myself a disservice because I'm not playing into the archetypes of the White Scars enough to really benefit from it. Because all I've painted up is a bunch of Inceptors and Intercessors. I think once I finally get the Blade Guard done and some Assault Intercessors, I'll be a bit more quids in running them as White Scars. Because I remember you and Richie will be like, all you've got is bolters. Why aren't you taking them as Imperial Fists? It's like, I don't want them to be Imperial Fists. I want them to be White Scars. And I like them as White Scars. I think White Scars are very good. I think, on the weekend, I sort of showed the some of the benefits of the White Scars when my regular Intercessors can smash face into other Space Marines because they're in the assault doctrines. Therefore, even with their fists, they're doing -1 AP and 2 damage. I think they can be pretty good once you get them to turn 3 and onwards.
That's fair. I think this is the thing with me when it comes to the White Scars and the reason why I really struggle with placing them higher. I think White Scars have suffered because I think certain models that kind of, support their archetypes are really overpointed. I think the Outriders are a really, really strong unit. But I think the problem is with the Outriders now is that they have been really neutralized by the points hike on them. I think 50 points a model is a bit crazy for an Outrider. I would have been much happier had they arrived at the 45 point level. I appreciate their original point cost was 40, and maybe that was too low. Although, to be honest with you, I think I was perfectly happy with that. But I think 50 is too high. I think 45 would have probably been the sweet spot for them. There was also a lot of nonsense with the ATVs early doors, but I think that's all been neutralized now, hasn't it? They kind of FAQ'd a bit of the ATV nonsense out of.
That was the apothecaries being able to resurrect them.
Yeah, do they still do that, or they definitely removed that?
They've removed that because attack bikes are now no longer. I think they're still classed as infantry. Can't remember, but they changed the wording of it to eliminate the attack bike, but keep the bikes, if I recall correctly.
Well, you mean the ATV? You mean?
Sorry, yes, the ATV. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, although obviously the ATV is a really interesting unit, again I haven't really seen that much. I mean, it's not been something that I've seen all that consistently. I think they obviously did a good job of neutralizing some of that efficiency by potentially increasing points or making other changes to certain things that people were exploiting for that. So, obviously those changes are certainly interesting. And again, on the more terrain dense boards, having Outriders and these ATVs, they obviously struggle with maneuvering through terrain, and that's a big consideration when it comes to the more kind of competitive end. Obviously, when they do get stuck in, they can do some really great work, and the fact that they can advance and charge is far from meaningless. It's just that thing where I think there's been a number of things done to kind of neutralize that aspect of it. I still think the Landspeeder Storm is really good for these guys. Again, I think the Landspeeder Storm is good across the board. I think the Scouts and potentially Scout Bikes have got some interesting play with White Scars. Obviously, you're going to want to be looking at things like your Vanguard Vets and your Assault Squads and Land Speeders, although no one's taking Land Speeders because they don't have the core keyword. And again, they can be on the expensive side. So I think that's the thing. It's like, I struggle with it. Also, their named character is so dumb because he's a Primaris on foot model. And it's like, How did you arrive at that? Like,
Well,
why couldn't you put him on a bike?
I get it, but again, it's like not every Kriegsman needs to have shovels. It's like, but I also get it because
He's the Khan.
They
He's the Khan.
they produced him before the Outrider model, and I think that was the problem. If he'd come out, now he probably would be on the bike. But he's actually really good. So he does an aura buff of +1 to wound if you charge. That's huge. Like that, you can make them really good. There's a banner which gives you +1 to strength as well, so you can really kind of combo it up. So you can be wounding vehicles quite easily with bog standard infantry. So I mean, what I love about them is they've got so many cool movement tricks. They've got loads of stratagems. They can, like, one of them can move twice, but then you won't be able to do anything. You can advance and get -1 to hit. You can outflank effectively for a stratagem, which is a lot cheaper than actually putting it in reserves. They've got loads of cool movement tricks, which is what I like about it, because it's forcing me to play a very different type of game than that I do with my guard. Basically, it's forcing me to be much more movement orientated. I think they do really well. I've seen lots of people more competitively take lots of attack bikes, lots of multi-melters, lots of bike heavy lists, or just I think they're just good with like blade guard stuffing impulsors, for example, making the most out of those. I think the thing that probably is their biggest downside is I've only got the generic Space Marine stratagem to shift one unit into all doctrines. They don't have anything that can bump them straight into the assault doctrine, like for cheap, i.e. 1 CP, because the generic one costs 2 CP to do all doctrines. If they had that, I think that would be more beneficial for them, because they get really good once they're in that assault doctrine, but until then they do struggle a bit. But yeah, I really rate them, so that's why I've put them a bit higher in my list.
Well, where have you put them, Phil? I can't remember what you said now.
Well, I haven't said.
Well, there you go. What did you say? Where have you put them?
I've put them, and this is a bit of bias. It is quite
that's
high.
Fair, that's fair.
Put them in number 3.
Blimey, number 3.
Here is the thing: you do see them like do well in tournaments. Like they actually do podium. They do well in the tournaments.
Yes, they do.
Even if they don't do well with me. But I think they've got. What I like about them is, as I keep saying, they're like really movement based. They're not just shooting. They're not just combat like a lot of the army archetypes are. What they do well is almost relatively unique to them. I mean, Black Templars have a similar thing with like, be rolling charges and stuff. But I think like they even like with the threat ranges of stuff, like especially with assault weapons, like they can advance and still shoot without any penalty. So eradicators with the assault version, it's like you're suddenly adding in 6 plus D6 to the range of their guns, because all of a sudden they've got a lot more mobility than anyone else. So the threat range of their guns and loadouts can be really good. You've just got to kind of build into that.
I mean, you could do some interesting stuff with like a Hellblaster squad with the assault Hellblasters or assault plasma in an impulsor with a lieutenant or captain, potentially, maybe even Coruscaro Khan, and have them do an aggressive move and get angles on people.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite stratagems that I've not yet done, but basically, I've done it on my Dreadnought. So you can shift, I think, any heavy and rapid fire weapons on one unit, you can turn into an assault weapon. So I've done it where I've like advanced my Dreadnought. I did this against Tim and his Black Templars. So I advanced it, spent the CP to be able to shoot all the guns, basically. Again, no minus penalty, because that's the White Scar chapter ability. And then I could still charge, and I charged into his Dreadnought after taking some pot shots at some other stuff, which was really cool. But I think actually, so rather than just going, I'm going to take the assault plasma or assault eradicators, take the heavy versions, and then you're spending 1 CP, I think it is, to shift that unit into an assault weapon. But then you're still getting the benefit of the better AP, the better damage, but also when you're in the turns where you're in the assault doctrine, i.e. past turn 1, you're getting an extra pip of AP onto it as well. So I think that they've got some really powerful combos, just no one's really using them all that much.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think White Scars are interesting in so much as I think their troop choices are an interesting scenario. It's like, what troop choices do you prioritize with White Scars? Do you lean into assault intercessors, regular intercessors? I suppose they're going to probably want to be utilizing either infiltrators or cursors in terms of an optimal kind of ideology, I suppose. I doubt you're going to really prioritize the heavy intercessors with these guys, but maybe. I mean, obviously, the assault intercessors can have assault bolter variants. So there could be some interesting things in that. But yeah, as you've indicated, Phil, I think you're going to definitely be looking at things like the vehicles, the bikes. I do think there's some interesting options for them in the Phobos pattern armor sets.
Yeah, I think assault intercessors do really well because the chainswords are -1, aren't they?
Correct.
But then if they're in the assault doctrine, they're -2, and then all of a sudden they're becoming 2 damage. So they're just gonna murder stuff.
Yeah,
you've just got to get them in combat and into the assault doctrine. That's the tricky bit, basically.
The Khan on bike is also a really good unit as well, right?
Yeah, and I think there's like a really cool relic spear you can give him as well. And some of the other relics are really good. Like there's one that's like an aura for +1 to advance and charges. There's Corrosion Storm, which is +D3 attacks, which you can combo with the Teeth of Terror to just get tons of attacks on a character. Yeah,
there's definitely some interesting synergies with them, and that's the thing. It's not that I don't think White Scars are good. I just think the thing is that again, some of the lack of options they've got, but also combined with, I just think various other armies just have some are just a little better than they are at doing this. But I do think your points about their movement archetype is actually really interesting and something definitely necessary to consider when evaluating them, because obviously they are quite movement heavy. And again, the ability to fall back and charge is not meaningful either, right? Like, they get fall back and charge. I mean, that's pretty big. I mean, that's a pretty good rule.
I mean, I did that in my game against Tim again. So I was in combat with like 3 of my units, fell them all back. I was like, don't worry, I'm not retreating. I'm going to charge in. Some of the other stuff that was in the background, like my Inceptors, were shooting at his units to soften them up. Then I charged back in again. I'm then getting my extra +1 attack for charging in for being Space Marines and stuff like that. And you can also spend a CP to fall back and shoot with 1 unit as well. So, I mean, they've got a ton of stuff. What I like about them is they're just a really good generic Space Marines. They've got the archetype of bikes, but they don't actually, bar the 2 characters, have any special units, but they're still really good. I feel like what's good about them is they can make anything good, whereas I think a lot of the better armies tend to rely on certain builds to be good.
That's fair. I'm always convinced that there must be some kind of play with the White Scars and Reavers specifically as well, but I'm never sure. Reavers are the unit, much like Richie, where I'm like, there must be a way that these guys get good somehow. Like, come on now. It can't just all be the Hounds of Mordkai or bust.
No, I know. I mean, maybe they get fixed in next year's Codex if that happens.
Yeah, well, there you go. All right, mate, there you go. White Scars for me, Ultramarines for you. Let's move on now to our number 7.
See how the sky has turned a sickly color.
My number 7 is Black Templars. What is your number 7?
Iron Hands.
Oh, okay. Blimey. God, we really are coming at this from different directions, aren't we? All right, well, we said we're defaulting to me, so we'll talk about Black Templars. I've put Black Templars at number 7 because I think, as was potentially evident from the various conversations that we've had on the topics of Space Marines and Black Templars in the past, I love the Black Templars and what they've done with them in this new codex. I think from a model range perspective, they're one of the most gorgeous ranges that they've constructed, featuring one of the greatest models Games Workshop has ever crafted in the form of High Marshal Helbrecht. I think that model is just redonkulously good. But unfortunately, models aren't rules. But, you know, being number 7, it kind of puts them top of the bottom, as it were. If it's a list of 13, they are the middle child, essentially, as far as I'm concerned. And the reason I've put them there is because I think that the problem the Black Templars have is that their vowel system is both good and bad. And there's a number of weird, ambiguous elements to how certain aspects of that stuff work, or how you could interpret how stuff that works. But I think giving them a negative attribute certainly harms them a little bit in terms of some of the competitive ideas. But they've got so many options. Again, like they've got 2 special characters. They've got unique builds for lieutenants and captains. So you can take a lieutenant as a Castellan, and as a Castellan, you can take different weapons than a regular lieutenant. And similarly, you can take a captain as a marshal, and they have access to different weapons than your regular captain, which is super exciting. They've got the Crusade Squad, the Primaris Crusade Squad. They've got the Sword Brethren. They're just a really...
They've also got multi-melters on their vehicles.
They've got multi-melters on their vehicles. They've got the Emperor's Champion.
Yep.
Don't forget the Emperor's Champion. He's a character too. So yeah, they got a lot of good stuff going for them. I just think the problem is with them is we are now, from here on in my opinion anyway, talking now about the kind of creme de la creme of Space Marines. And although I think Black Templars are fantastic, and I love them, they're just not quite up there with what's ahead of them, in my opinion. Obviously, you don't feel the same, Phil. So please, I mean, where are Black Templars for you?
I mean, I'll let you take a guess first of all.
I'm gonna say number 6.
No, I put
flipping
them
heck.
number 1.
Flipping heck!
I did.
Number 1.
I did.
Phil, I'm intrigued, mate. Why are Black Templars the best Space Marine faction?
Partly, you've kind of said a lot of the reasons, like good models, good unit selection.
Really nice unit
I
selection,
think some of the vowels are super strong. Like the one, I mean, I know you didn't rate it, but the 5+ Invuln and a mini transhuman where you can't be wounded on a 2+, so on a 1 and a 2. When I played against him, crazy strong. You know, I know you don't think it will happen all that often, but it's like, cool, I've got like a Dreadnought Fist. I'll be wounding you on 2s. I've just rolled a bunch of 2s. Oh, well, they don't count. So I think they've got a lot of play. Just from that one set of vowels is really good. I think some of the others are good, but for different reasons. And what I like about it is you choose it at the beginning of your game. So you've got lots of different... You can tailor it based on your opponent. So it gives you a bit of customization that you don't normally get when you're doing a tournament list where you've got to pre-write down everything. I also think their ability to give kind of relics and abilities to like sergeants and units is really strong. I think there's a ton of like hidden combos there. I basically think they're going to be really good, but because they've only just come out, people haven't had chance to digest it and actually come up with some decent builds for them. I think, you know, being able to take 5+ Invuln on everything is great, that you could then whack that on your vehicles, especially things like Dreadnoughts, which are really good at the moment because of, you know, -1 damage on them. Like suddenly giving your Redemptors a 5+ Invuln save, huge. Suddenly taking a bunch of, you know, Impulsors, and each one's potentially got a multi-melter on it, maybe, assuming they can get that upgrade. I mean, no other Space Marine army can have that sort of loadout and play style. So that is kind of why I've put them at the number 1 spot.
I'm intrigued, man. I mean, that's interesting. And look, I don't. And this is the thing, right? I don't know. I feel like, again, we'll get to this when we get to this, but I feel like my number 1, number 2 pick are so beyond the rest of the Marines that I feel like I feel like it's to me it feels obvious what the number one and
Well,
number two Space Marines are.
I also feel like yes, they are, and that was one of the reasons why I don't want to put them there. Had something.
So they're number 2 and 3 potentially.
Yeah, maybe we'll see.
Maybe we'll find out. We'll find out. But the point is like, I mean, the Black Templars definitely have got some interesting options in them. I love the fact that they've got a crusade, a Land Raider Crusader specific stratagem, because there's a legitimate incentive in that army list to run something like a Crusader. You can build some strategies around it. You can definitely dive into your Firstborn collection and put those in. They've got the best chaplains in Space Marines, the best chaplains by far. Though the problem is with that is that I think it becomes quite tight with how you need to kind of run it, because I think you will probably, if you want to do them well, look at having 2 chaplains. I think you're going to want to probably take Grimaldus as your Black Templar chaplain that does all the Black Templar litanies, and then I think you're going to probably want a regular chaplain who then gives you all your regular chaplain abilities, so the +2 to your charges, the I'm Wellard litany where he gets +1 to his attacks and strength and damage and all that kind of stuff. So I think, you're probably going to want to double down on chaplains. And again, with the way that the game is currently, in a competitive sense, obviously taking chaplains is a plus point, because you're not then denying yourself from gaining access to the Abhor the Witch secondary, which can in certain matchups be really valuable. So the fact that you don't need to, or don't really even have the option to take librarians, could be seen as a negative, but really at the moment could be dressed up as a positive.
Yeah, and they've actually got lots of ways of denying psychic powers as well. So
that's true.
While it would be normally a hindrance, it's like, I'm pretty sure they've still got the stratagem of, on a 4+, like 50-50, I've just denied your psychic power, even if you rolled like an 11 to cast. It's like, well, that's really good.
I'm curious actually as well whether or not you can upgrade this second chaplain to be a Master of Sanctity, to be the upgraded chaplain, because I'm not sure if they're 1 per army, and I'm not sure if Grimaldus would take that slot if you were to do that kind of thing. But again, I mean, let's not speculate on that side, because it's probably
I think
something
the bugbear I've seen people complain about Grimaldus at the moment is he will like max point assassination for your opponent, because it's a unit made up of 4 characters. So each one is 3 points, or is it 2 points now?
3 points.
Which, I mean, I hope that gets fixed in the future, because that seems a bit unfair. And you do have similar units, like Gaunt's Ghost, for example, all made up of characters. So yeah, I feel like that should be fixed in a future FAQ, hopefully.
Just play open war, mate. It's more fun.
Well, exactly. Or Crusade.
But let's not go crazy. What was I going to say? Yeah, but I think that's the thing. I think I can see the argument why Black Templars are great, because I think they are great. I mean, I'm taking Black Templars to the doubles in January with Joe. I really like Black Templars. I'm on the bandwagon, but it's just, I don't know. I look at what's ahead of them in my list anyway. I just look at them and think to myself, I just can't justify them going beyond the middle of the board.
I will concede 1 point, and that's one that you've not actually made yet, and that is their unique units for Crusade Squad and the Sword Brethren.
Yeah,
aren't that good. Like, I think the Crusade
Squads are
Crusades
good.
are all right, but Sword Brethren is arguably not as good as Blade Guard.
Nowhere near as good as Blade Guard. But you can still take Blade Guard.
Well, yes. But I think I think Sword Brethren probably needs a bump in some format, whether that's just points. Well, it will have to be points, because they won't fix it in any other way. But I think the limitation on the loadout is a bit restrictive in terms of how you might want to build them. And yeah, potentially they're a bit too expensive for what they do. If that got fixed, I think that would, make them better.
I think the problem is as well, though, is the Black Templars are so very clearly one type of army, right? You can basically take a bunch of melee units, a bunch of kind of foot slogging, punchy people that are going to be relying on the reroll charges and all the rest of it. But again, they struggle with that kind of mobility, and they don't benefit in the same way as other kind of assault-based armies might. And they don't have the same kind of unit selection. but also as well, they really struggle when it comes to wanting to justify taking anything that's shooty or, actually got any kind of range to it. They, from a kind of lore perspective and kind of from a rules perspective, you're not going to fall over yourself going, oh, I must put a Devastator squad in my army, or I must put a Predator, even though obviously you can and maybe you will, but, from an army perspective, you probably don't feel the compulsion to do that. And I think that's one of their weird little things. It's like they feel like they're missing out on a part of the Marine gameplay. And I think they're not utilizing some of the best units in the army because of it.
Yeah, I mean, they can still take them, but you're right.
Of course.
They're not getting any benefits to them, but pretty much all the armies that we've not talked about yet that are pretty much all close combat related don't really have any benefits for shooting either. So they sort of all fall foul of that same thing. But thematically, Black Templars are much more like close combat themed, I guess, overall. So you don't really think to take anything shooting unless it's a Land Raider, basically.
Yeah. And again, though, if you're taking the Land Raider, you're taking the Crusader, because that's the one. That's the one you take. There you go. So Black Templars for me, number 1 for Phil. Flipping heck. I
like how
imagined.
our bottom half of the list was pretty much spot on, like for like, and then we wildly deviated from the top half.
No, it's interesting, mate. It's an interesting debate. Let's move on and talk about what our number 6s are.
Enemy shots! Get behind the barrel!
My number 6, Phil. In fact, I'm not interested in my number 6. I've stolen the show too many times now. I want to hear what your number 6 is, Phil. Tell me.
Well, it was a hard one to decide, because I think when we get to the top, especially since, I've already stuck in some rogue ones in there, according to you.
No, mate, no. I am not the authority on these things. I'm simply a man with an opinion, and you are entitled to yours equally. But this is top of the bottom. Bottom of the top is what we're dealing with now. This is where the worm has turned.
Exactly. And what I've put in is the boys from Fenris, the Space Wolves.
Blimey, Fenris, no less. Flipping heck. I put the Space Wolves at number 3. Number 3.
High. Well,
but
they do deserve to go quite high, but like I said, too many things to squeeze in that clown car. One of them's going to fall out.
Yeah, exactly. Number 6 for me is the Blood Angels.
Oh, okay. Good.
So here's the thing, right, with the Blood Angels. And the reason why I put the Blood Angels at number 6 is I think the Blood Angels are tremendous. I think the fact is that the Blood Angels have so much choice, much like what we already said with the Flesh Terrors. You got your Sanguinary Guard, your Sanguinary Ancient, your Sanguinary Priest, your Death Company, Primaris Death Company, your various forms of Dreadnought, your Baal Predators, various other synergies that maximize the efficiency of certain units. Obviously, Blade Guard veterans are really good as Blood Angels. Vanguard vets are really good as Blood Angels. Assault Marines are good as Blood Angels. There's a lot of stuff that you can take that is good as a Blood Angel, because the ability to add one to your wound roll is strong, but in conjunction with the mobility that the +1 movement gives you is even stronger. And then factor that in again with the fact that they've got access to some incredible characters and some incredible relics. These guys are strong, in my opinion. Very strong. But I think what lets them down is that they, unfortunately, to run them optimally, they have to be played in a certain way. And I think that's really boring. And I think, unfortunately, because you can only really run them one way, although I think they're really strong, I can't put them higher than 6, because I think the problem is with them is that they become quite one-dimensional, and what they do is not great if you're not playing in the optimal circumstances. If you're playing on the right board with the right terrain in the right kind of layout, Blood Angels will win every time, because they can move between the terrain features and be really oppressive and apply pressure. you turn up to a game and all of a sudden you're up against an army like the Orcs that is ignoring line of sight, although admittedly not as much as they might have used to be, or the Nids as it is now that are doing all that ignore line of sight stuff. You throw that at them, they're in trouble, but you turn up on a board with little to no terrain, they're in serious trouble because of what you're kind of leaning into and the kind of units that you've got. They will just get shredded if they're in open ground. So I think they're very circumstantial, but I think their characters are incredible. The Librarian Dreadnought, even though it's also available as a Flesh Tearers option, is superb. But, Lamartez is incredible. Dante is really interesting. I don't think he's like top tier, but he's pretty strong. Mephiston is, it's just gorgeous mini. Absolutely stupendous piece of miniature design, and also just an absolute monstrosity on the tabletop. And yeah, the relics are great. So I think this is the thing. I really like Blood Angels. Don't presume that me putting them 6 is making me say that I think they're bad by any stretch of the imagination. Being the 6th best Space Marine chapter is a strong place to be. But I think I just don't think they've got as many obvious or easy wins in them as some of the ones that come ahead, in my opinion. I mean, what do you reckon the Blood Angels, Phil? Where did you have the Blood Angels? Phil, you're still muted.
I rated
every now and
them.
again. There we go, lovely. Every now and again you make that mistake, but it's rare. Here we go, please.
I rated them at number 4.
Oh, okay, not too far
I
off.
think, same sort of reasons. I do think they're good. I think they've got a lot of what they excel at, probably more than any other chapter, is they've got a really good selection of units that are, not just characters, like the Sanguinary Guard, Death Company. They're not bad. They've got lots of cool options that most of, probably with the exception of Space Wolves, are the only ones that have got actually lots of units that aren't characters that are interesting. So I think, that's why I kind of rate it quite highly. Yeah, you've got to run them in a certain play style to an extent. I think they still do well. Again, you can lean into that shooting archetype. They do have things like Bile Predators. That is still a thing, right? Or is it just relegated to a stratagem now?
No, Bile Predator is very much a thing. Unless you're thinking about the overcharged engines, which is which was part of the Bile Predator before. So the Bile Predator was known for having like a turbocharged engine, so it moved further than other people. And in fact, in 5th edition, or rather, I think it was a 4th edition Codex edition, but it was a 5th edition thing. They gave them outflank, which was really hilarious. So you used to have outflanking Bile Predators with flamestorm cannons just going like, hello! And this was before you had to be 9 inches away when you came in. So you just park up beside like a unit and just be like, burn! Oh, it was lovely. But yeah, no, Bile Predators is still a thing. And I think the overcharged engines is still a thing. In fact, they definitely
maybe
are.
I'm sure there used to be a really cool Bile Predator stratagem, which maybe just, I can't remember if that is still a thing or not, though.
If there is, it doesn't immediately come to mind.
No.
I know there was definitely the overcharged engine thing, and you could put that on the Impulsor now as well. So you could have a supercharged Impulsor that moves extra fast, which is pretty cool.
So they're cool. They're all right.
Yeah.
They're pretty good.
They're Blood Angels, right? It's weird with Blood Angels because they're one of the most iconic factions in Space Marines, and then by extension in 40k. But they're Blood Angels, aren't they? It's sort of weird. It's hard to get excited about Blood Angels. They're brilliant. They're awesome. But they're Blood Angels. It's like, oh yeah, cool, Blood Angels. I don't know. I never necessarily know. I think even people who have beautiful Blood Angels armies, or are big fans of Blood Angels, are not super passionate about it in the same way some of the other Space Marine armies are. Like, don't get me wrong. I think I'm sure plenty of people out there who love Blood Angels be saying, no, I love them. I've got Blood Angel tattoos, and I say my prayers to Dante and Sanguinius every night. And obviously, if that is you, probably maybe don't do that. But but the point is that like. I know it's weird. I don't know what it is about Blood Angels. They sort of feel like that army that maybe people painted their figures as because they saw them on the box art many years ago or whatever. But I suppose they've been consistently featured in a lot of other media
Yeah,
and a lot of other things.
they're basically space vampires, aren't they?
Yeah.
I remember. So my best mate Andy, from when I was growing up as a kid, he had Blood Angels. Like he was a Blood Angel player through and through, basically from like second edition, quite a bit onwards, until you met him and he was playing Tau instead. So he obviously made that shift at some point.
And he had the look of a space vampire.
Yes, pasty whites, and probably sucks people's bloods for a bit of fun on the weekend.
Almost certainly. Not that we judge.
No, who are we?
I mean, everyone has their own form of fun.
Exactly. But yeah, so I can get the appeal of their kind of archetypes, and the Black Rage was always like a really big thing, which feels like it's been toned down a little bit in more recent years in comparison to how it was presented in the past. I don't know, but yeah, I think they're cool. I think the over reliance on Sanguinary Guard in competitive play really bores me, because I call it's just them. I wish they were just more than that.
I genuinely wish Sanguinary Guard did not exist. I think they're the worst thing about. I think it's the worst addition to the army. I used to enjoy the army more from a lore perspective when it was Index Astartes Space Marines with a Death Company. Like
Death Company seems much more iconic to me than Sanguinary Guard.
Yeah, because historically, in terms of the way that the Blood Angels were positioned, was that they were much more bog standard Space Marines, but they just had this Death Company that they had to deal with. Whereas obviously over time, because it used to be that they famously used to have the Honor Guard squad, which was the command squad for Blood Angel commanders, and they used to all have jump packs, and it was like a command squad with jump packs. And it was just a gold painted command squad, but it was regular Space Marine armor. But then obviously I think Matt Ward with the 5th edition Blood Angels Codex came along and said, Sanguinary Guard, they've always been a thing. And you're like, oh, okay, look a bit derpy, but sure, all right, good. And from a modeling perspective, putting those tiddly little wings on them, good Lord, it's a nightmare. But yeah, no, I'm not a huge fan of the Sanguinary Guard. But I love Blood Angels. I've got a Blood Angel army. I like Blood Angels, but yeah, I'm not passionate about them, I suppose, is where I'm at. So maybe I'm projecting my own feelings on them onto others. Maybe someone out there is just like, how dare you, Dan? I love Blood Angels, and fair play to you. Like, I'm clearly wrong, as is so often the case. Sorry, Blood Angel fans. We're going to move on now to number 5. We definitely talked about what your number 6 was.
Yes, yeah, we did, which was Space Wolves.
Yes, that's right. We're going to get to that in a bit. All right, so number 5.
Your duty is not done, brother!
Phil, what's your number 5, mate? What's your number 5? What's it?
It's black with silver arms. It's the Death Watch.
Ooh, okay. Death Watch. So mine are also black with silver bits. The Iron Hands.
Ooh.
Oh, the slippery fingers of the Iron Hands. I'll tell you what, Phil, I was looking online today for robot hands, and you can buy these really weird articulated fingers that give you like strange robot skeleton hands.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
The future.
So you too could become an Iron Hand if you want to import these strange implements from China. Fun story though, Phil. They won't arrive until sometime in January, so they don't, meet my needs.
Okay. I'm not sure I want to know what you wanted to use them for.
Well, all will be revealed in the future.
Exciting, but also terrifying as well.
Oh, mate, honestly. I had this idea while I was in the shower.
Okay, I don't want to know. Keep that dirty thoughts to yourself.
Anyway, so yeah, Iron Hands. How low down was Iron Hands for you?
Let me just double check. It was number 7, so not far off.
Okay. Yeah. Not far off. Not far off at all. So look, this is going to be really straightforward, right? Iron Hands are number 5 in my opinion because Dreadnoughts are really good, and Iron Hands are really good with Dreadnoughts, and the Devastator Doctrine is really good as Iron Hands, and they drop pod in Devastator squads that really muck you up turn 1, cause you a big old headache, and then a bunch of dreadnoughts trundle across the board and are tough to kill and are being repaired constantly and are doing all sorts of nonsense. And then by the time you've dealt with the Devastator squads that are in your lines, you've got a bunch of dreadnoughts bearing down on you. And then you go, I'm going to shoot that dreadnought because he looks menacing. And then your opponent turns around and says, well, you'd like to, but he's a character and there's 2 infantry stood behind a wall that you can't see. So sorry about that.
Let's hope those 2 aren't just standard infantry, because you need 3 of them. Let's hope they've got bodyguard
not for bodyguards.
Rule. Yeah, they need to be the bodyguard ones.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The bodyguard, but you only need the 2 models that come in the unit.
Yeah. No, I completely
Yeah.
agree with you. They've got dreadnoughts are really good. That's for if you lean into that heavily, why not do it as Iron Hands? The character rule being kind of abused is what makes the character dreadnought good, because you can upgrade one using a stratagem to be a character. If you were to take them as a successor as Minotaurs, they can have another character dreadnought or Red Scorpions for the Cullen Leviathan to be a character as well. I think I saw a list recently did really well at AGT. I can't remember which one. That was Minotaurs Iron Hands, making use of the character that you can then protect, because Moloch, Hecton, I think is the name of the dreadnought one, has got like ballistic skill 2+, which is quite cool for a contemptor.
Can you swap out his weapon? Does it have to be?
No, it's got to be the plasma, which is a bit annoying.
It's still not terrible though. It's just not as good as it maybe could be.
Yes, I think that's the case. And I also think Iron Hands are kind of, they're probably riding that wave of, Volkite spam as well. I think the list I saw had my favorite Chain Fists, but Chain Fist with Volkite. So rather than doing double Volkite, it was Volkite Chain Fist, another one Volkite Chain Fist. Because the Chain Fist in combat is so good. It's like a flat 6 damage or flat 4 damage.
It could be against vehicles.
It's D3. It's D3. Wait, what is it? 2D3, I think it is normally, or flat 6 against vehicles.
Yeah, and that checks out.
Which is crazy good.
Yeah, really strong, especially if you're up against other dreadnoughts, right? Because you only have to get 2 of those hit through against a regular Spudnaught, I suppose. Against a Contemptor, it'd still be alive on 1 wound immediately. But anyway, the point is that I think the dreadnoughts are strong. Iron Hands make them stronger. There's a bunch of really mad war gear, but it's the fact that obviously they've got so much like stuff that synergizes with like the Tech Marines and healing up vehicles with psychic powers, so you can just keep stuff healthy. You can give them invulnerable saves. You can reduce the damage that certain vehicles take. Admittedly, that doesn't then align with the dreadnought native only in death does duty end ability or whatever it's called. But again, if you're going to take some other vehicles, be that a tank of some description, you can definitely lean into this and do some interesting stuff with it. But again, I think it's just the ridiculous, aggression of that Devastator squad turn 1. You take 1 drop pod, 2 Devastator squads, bring them down, and they're just neutralizing serious threats early doors. And then from there on in, you're basically applying pressure as your opponent is attempting to, deal with that immediate threat. And again, the problem is with the Imperial. Sorry, I keep saying Imperial. The problem is with the Iron Hands is again, they are quite one-dimensional if you want to use them competitively, but the things that they make better are some of the best things in Space Marines. So unfortunately, they're just a thing that optimizes the things that are already pretty well optimized. So innately, they're gonna do well. So there you go, Iron Hands, Phil.
Yeah.
Number 5. Oh no, we just did number 5. Number 4.
We shall be the end of you!
Phil, I seem to remember you already telling us what your number 4 was, but I'm going to ask you to jog my memory. What was number 4?
It was those space vampires for Blood Angels.
That was it. Yes, there you go. Blood Angels, number 4. What was it about the Blood Angels that put them so high up for you, Phil? I don't think we really addressed that before.
I think the +1 to wound is crazy strong. I think
Crazy strong.
got if they lean into jump packs, assault, close combat stuff, which to an extent is a bit one-dimensional, but I think that does make them really strong because again, it's all about movement, getting around the board. Yeah, I like that they've got lots of options for units as well and characters. They've got the only apothecary with a jump pack as well, which is really handy.
Can you not give a regular? No, you can't. Can you? You can't give a regular firstborn apothecary a jump pack, can you?
No.
Yeah, that is a pickle. Yeah, no, that's fair. And that apothecary can put them in the assault doctrine, which is mad.
It's exactly what you want with a bunch of bloodthirsty, space vampires. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just say as well, though, not that we necessarily were going to talk about it elsewhere, or maybe we were, but the new Forge World matey boy for the Blood Angels. Oh, he's pretty, isn't he?
That's good. Let's talk about that in the outro.
Yeah, we will. We'll get to that and all the other things that they've revealed on the community things in the outro. That's an outro thing. We'll talk about the tile guy and the axe guy and the stuff. Oh, stuff. Lovely stuff. So my number 4 is Ultramarines.
No.
Ultramarines. So you had Ultramarines way down at like 9 or something.
8.
8. Flipping.
Again, it's hard to squeeze them all in.
No, I agree. So the reason why I've put Ultramarines high up in my estimates is definitely because of the characters and definitely because of some of the utility that those characters offer you. I think not enough credit is given to some of the range of characters that they've got and the weird sort of things that you can do with them. But obviously they've got one of the best characters in Space Marines, which is Roberte Gilliman, Bobby G. I mean, what's Bobby G bad at, Phil? What does Bobby G not do?
Psychic powers.
All right, fair enough. He doesn't have very many psychic powers. I'll give you that. But other than that, Phil, what does he not do?
I mean, probably not a lot. I mean, he can probably look good on the front of Vogue magazine with his chiseled jaw, looking all
and
handsome.
his slit throat.
Yeah, well, he's got a little cravat to cover that up.
He's got his little cravat.
Obviously,
he does. To be fair, he does. I mean, yeah, Bobby G's got so much utility and so many options to him. He's filthy as well when it comes to his ability to sort of dispatch really, really strong units. He's got lots of options in combat, really great buffs. But I think, you can get blindsided by Bobby G and not then appreciate some of the other characters. Calgar is ridiculously strong. I think Calgar is easily one of the best Space Marine characters in the game. I think, of all the Space Marine characters, I think he is, in my humble estimations, I think Calgar is the number 1 Space Marine character after Bobby G.
Well, of course he is with his flat free fists.
Yeah, well, he's got flat free damage on those fists. My goodness, he's unbelievable. But even without flat free damage, when he's D3, I just think, halving the incoming damage, the addition of his Victrix Honor Guard, he's a really strong option. Tigerius is, really amazing. I think he's just got so many options as a psyker and just, again, arguably one of the best psychers in the game. I think Eldrad Ulfran takes the crown, although, again, I think, some of the Lord of Change variants are pretty strong as well. But I think, Tigerius is definitely up there as one of the best psychers in the game. And then, some of the lesser known characters like Sergeant Kronos. I think Sergeant Kronos is incredible.
Yeah. Especially when you had access to the, was it 9 Lascannon Land Raider?
I mean, still technically you have access to it because it's a legendary unit, so you can still take it and you can still put Kronos in it. But yeah, no, now you can't do it in a match play setting. No, you can't. But then Kronos couldn't go in the Land Raider. Oh, I've got the upgrade sprue behind me. Hang on. Terminus Ultra. There you go. I read the words. The Terminus Ultra. You couldn't go in it before, but you can now. But then you can't take it in match play. But I was saying to someone the other day, it's like, why not just put an Ultramarine patrol in your Imperium army and just be like, I've got Sergeant Kronos in a whirlwind and a unit of infiltrators. That's a really nice little additional patrol, just to be a little bit annoying. Just be like, there you go. Got ballistic skill 2+ whirlwind and some infiltrators. Happy days, It's pretty reasonable. So I just think this is the thing. I think, and also the ability to withdraw and still shoot. Some of the best stratagems in the game. If you haven't experienced it, charging Ultramarines is not fun.
Oh no!
And
yeah, I've had that happen to me a few times.
Yeah. It's like it's one of those things that you never forget it, but you always get caught by it once. The first time you experience it, and it's like, so I'm going to be overwatching you with 4 units or whatever it is, or 3 units, and you're like, right, okay, good. I'm sure that's going to be fun. The Ultramarines, the redeploy stratagems, the war gear options. I just think they're really strong, and the characters obviously elevate them as well. So, I'm a fan, mate. I am a fan of the boys in blue. I feel dirty for saying it, but I do like them.
Well, no, fair choices. I think I probably would have rated it a bit higher if I could, but again, it's a clown car. There's not enough room at the top.
That's it.
And I think they do rely a bit too much on the characters to be good. I think the standard chapter tactic is okay, but not great. If to sort of elevate the chapter up to be higher, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I understand what you're saying, but I think the thing is, it's just the characters really do make a point of elevating them, and I just think they're great in my opinion. I think they're just a good solid all rounder. There's nothing in Space Marines that's going to not benefit from being an Ultramarine. It's like there's nothing about a unit in Space Marines that's going to go, oh, that's not much good. I mean, admittedly, sure, fall back and shoot might not be the best for a unit of Blade Guard veterans, but the +1 leadership might be useful in certain instances, and then all the various other stratagems or benefits they might yield from being combined with some of the character options will definitely, make up for that. So there you go. My name's Dan, and I like Ultramarines. I'm coming to terms with my newfound newfound problem.
Soon you'll be caught going out buying McCrag spray paint.
I've done it, mate. I've almost finished Bobby G. I got him beside me, for my unnumbered sons. This is the only way that I could sort of bring myself to do it, though. I had to do it in a sort of hipster way. I'm like, no, I'm not really collecting Ultramarines. Anyway, all right, we're going to move on. Number 3.
Cleanse the monstrosity!
All right, mate, it's serious business now. We're in the top 3. These are, in our opinion, the bestest chapters. So what have you got at number 3, Phil?
I told you already, it's the White Scars. And
Blimey!
I gave you my elevator pitch as to why I thought they deserved that spot. To be fair, that there's a lot of favoritism going into this top 3 for them being there.
You and me both, mate. You and me both in some regards. I think favoritism definitely plays a factor in it. And look, to revisit the White Scars, I think there's an argument for everything potentially occupying the number 3 spot. I think any of the ones that we've kind of gone through in the sort of top, I don't know, maybe like 4 to 8 could potentially. Yeah, potentially. I think there's an argument for all forms of Space Marines. But again, this is the joy of doing lists. Sometimes you're wrong. But I genuinely think that White Scars struggle just because of the reliance on certain types of units that have some downsides and have some points hikes and have some other things that make them slightly less optimized than other options. But again, it's not to say that they can't be a number 3 army. I think there's definitely think White Scars can cause a lot of problems. But my number 3 is Space Wolves.
Ooh.
Space Wolves have the most options of any Space Marine army. They have the most. They've got long fangs, the Wolfen. They've got special Terminator units. They've
Hounds of
got
Morkai. Don't forget them.
the Hounds of Morkai. Don't forget the Hounds of Morkai. I mean, that's an important army addition. I'm sure everyone's been rushing out and getting their Hounds of Morkai on the go. I mean, that could be a good poll. Have you ever seen or used the Hounds of Morkai? That would be a question, wouldn't it? It's like, has anyone out there ever used that unit or seen it? Conversely. But yeah, you got the Thunderwolf Cavalry, which is obviously one of the iconic aspects of the army. Although I think, from a competitive set, I don't think very many people are leaning massively into the Thunderwolf Cavalry now because they're quite pricey and also, again, struggle when it comes to interacting with certain types of terrain. But I do think the Thunderwolves are still awesome. They've got so many characters, and so many of those characters are tremendous. The new sculpt for Ragnar, my God, that's a fabulous looking model. To be fair to it, wasn't that one done by Darren? What's his face?
Darren Latham, yeah.
Yeah. I
think
that was
so.
one of his.
I think so.
Yeah, I think I remember him talking about working on it in an interview or whatever.
It's
But I mean, again,
what hasn't he sculpted? It seems.
Well, yeah. I mean, he seems to be extraordinarily talented. That man, he's quite a nuisance, isn't he? I mean, what a pain.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah. So I mean, yeah, the work done on Ragnar was extraordinary. The battle leader figure that they did for generic Space Wolves was also quite nice. I think that's the thing that Space Wolves kind of the only thing that really I feel like Space Wolves massively struggle with at the moment is the fact that their Primaris range, or they themselves are the range that's so that synergize with the Primaris range the least, and obviously you've got people out there doing amazing things in terms of sculpting custom Space Wolves. Obviously, shout out to Valborn. He does incredible, green stuffing of Space Marines to really exemplify the space wolfiness of them. And then obviously you've got Thunderwolfen as well. That guy does amazing work. Both of those individuals are on Instagram, and I encourage you check them out if you don't already follow them. So there are people out there doing gorgeous things with Primaris kits and Space Wolf-ifying them, but natively Primaris synergized with Space Wolves probably the least in terms of the aesthetics, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, like the kind of clean cut style, and I presume Black Templars also fell into that prior to the new Black Templars release.
Agreed. Blade Guard gave them a slight lease of life, though, didn't they? And the Assault Intercessor squads kind of
lean into that more for sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Blade. I'm saying Space Wolves they've got tons of vehicles. They've got Bjorn the Fell-Handed. They've got that flying boat thing that could be the transport version.
The Storm Wolf.
Yeah,
or Storm Fang.
Yes,
sorry.
Yeah, you got those two. You got Cyber Wolves, which we haven't mentioned. They do have a lot of options.
I mean,
go on.
No, I was going to say, and the characters. They've got so many character options as well. I mean, they've got as I keep saying, they've got the most options of any Space Marine faction. Like if you want choice, Space Wolves have got choice. Like they are overwhelmingly covered in choice.
Exactly. They are now are they more Vikings in space or werewolves in space? If Blood Angels were vampires in space.
I think they're more Vikings in space, but I think they're more Norse mythology in space, aren't they?
No, that's true. With a little sprinkle of dwarf.
Yes, yeah. They've kind of taken on some of the dwarf archetypes with the runes and all of the.
We like to drink and fight.
But yeah, Space Wolves, and again from a skill set ability, like the fact that they can all heroically intervene is really, really frustratingly good. Because you can do a lot of weird, fun stuff with heroic interventions and cause a lot of problems with them. Found out the other day, by the way, the rules for heroic intervention don't specify that you need to finish within engagement range. So if you happen to be 3 inches away from an enemy, but you don't want to be in combat with them, you can still move an inch towards them without triggering an active combat. But you can use the heroic intervention should you be in a rare situation where you are 3 inches away from an enemy and have no intention of heroically intervening into them, but you can do the heroic intervention.
Yeah, like maybe you
engagement
want to sneak onto an objective or something, maybe.
Well, exactly, right. And again, the dreadnought builds that people can do with Space Wolves is really strong as well. Like the Bjorn the Foul-Handed combined with the various Space Wolf dreadnought specialties is it's pretty
yeah, I mean, I was obviously on the receiving end of that a few weeks ago from Ross from Rapid Fire Wargaming, and he's basically all dreadnought army bar like 2 units pretty much. Like that was crazily strong. Like,
yes,
and it wasn't even Iron Hands. It's like, but it was still good.
Yeah. No, Space Wolves are great. I think they've just got so many options. There's a lot of interesting things you can do with them. I think the way they play is really quite unique within the confines of Marines because of the amount of options they've got and all of the wolfy elements that they kind of sprinkle on top of their army build. I just think they're a really interesting and versatile and numerous force with lots of options. So that's why I've put them in the number 3 spot. So yeah, all right,
nice.
We're going to move on to number 2. I get the feeling, Phil, we're going to align again because I know what your number 1 is.
Ooh.
And I know where you've put Death Watch. So I get the feeling that this one is going to be, at last, the Great Conjunction. Number 2.
Enemy attack! Make for the pipes!
So number 2, Phil, is it Dark Angels by any chance, Phil? Is it Dark Angels?
It is Dark Angels, yeah.
Oh, it must hurt you. It must hurt you, Phil, to put Dark Angels so high up. You're not a fan, are you, of the beautiful Dark Angels?
No, it felt like it was almost an auto-include to put them at number 1. However, I think there's good enough reasons to not put them there.
I agree, mate, because they're also my number 2 as well.
What? You not putting them as number 1?
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? It really is crazy. And don't get me wrong, my number 1 and number 2, I think there's...
Did you start out writing your list putting Dark Angels at number 1, and then you changed it as you worked through your list?
So I arranged a tier list. So I basically did my top tier, my mid tier, my bottom tier, and then I worked out what was going to be within those tiers. And then from there, I then started to negotiate why I felt certain things needed to be where they were. And the reason why I've put Dark Angels at number 2
is it? Can I guess? Is it because they don't deserve Primaris in the inner circle?
No, look, and here's the thing. Obviously, I have my specific ideology around the utilization of Primaris within the inner circle. I think, for the way that I like to play Dark Angels, I like to kind of keep them as a more kind of historic force based on a time before Primaris or, a time where maybe Primaris might have been there, but, didn't elevate themselves to the ranks of the inner circle. I totally accept, it's been a few months, maybe even a year since I've done my various rants on Primaris Marines being in the inner circle, but I've come to terms with it. I've moved on with it. At the end of the day, it's toy soldiers. I'm not going to be especially, frustrated about it, but at the same point, it's, again, as I often attest, it just felt like a missed opportunity. But that, that aside, we'll move along. But yeah, some of the Primaris units as Deathwing are redonkulous, right? Like the minute you go, here's my unit of Blade Guard veterans and their Deathwing, sorry. It's like they're so good. 2-up armor, 4-up invern, can only wound them on 4s. It's just ridiculous, like how good Deathwing are. And then the synergies with Ravenwing as well, the mobility, the OBSEC opportunities where you can put OBSEC on your Outriders or your bike squads. It's just stupid. And then again, so many units as well. This is the thing, like, and all of them are amazing, right? Like, if you think about the Dark Angel specialist units, the worst options they have are the Dark Shroud, which is -1 to hit for all Dark Angel units within 6 of it, which is not rubbish. It's just not the best. I mean, if anything, I think the Dark Shroud is a little overpointed because it's not that durable and you can still target it. But I still run Dark Shrouds. I think they're flipping amazing. But again, I understand that that's, broadly a unit that people assert isn't strong. The Vengeance, the variant of the Dark Shroud that's all plasma cannons. You familiar with that model, Phil? Am I saying words and you're thinking, what are you on about? Some sort of land speeder covered in big plasma cannons?
No, isn't it the one that's a giant cathedral?
That is the planes. I was going to get to those. So you've got the Dark Shroud, which is the which is again, it's a bit cathedral-esque.
It's a bit cathedral-esque, yeah. It's got quite a derpy looking plasma cannon.
Yeah, so you can take the variant that's quite cathedral-y, or you can take the Landspeeder Vengeance, which has got the big plasma cannons either side. Famously, when they first introduced this vehicle, it used to be able to kill itself in a round of shooting. Like, it was one of the most awful rules they'd ever introduced, and as a result, it's never really found its feet. This version of it is actually okay, but still not exceptional. So the Landspeeder variants of the Vengeance and the Dark Shroud aren't the best. The Nephilim's never really found its place, even though it's pretty cheap. So the Nephilim's the jet fighter, it's the plane. It's a pretty strong option. But
I think it's one of the best flyers visually, I think, for Space Marines. I think it looks really cool.
Yes, I agree. But the thing is that the Dark Talon is just better because of the mortal wounds output. And the fact that they've got that flyer as well is just, yeah, again, it's not nice options. But, obviously the stuff that really shines with these guys are the Deathwing units, specifically the Deathwing Terminators. Deathwing Knights are terrifying. Like, I think Deathwing Knights, the only reason people don't take Deathwing Knights in competitive builds is because they're not OBSEC. But I always chuck them in my armies because I just think they're so devastating. Like, when they're in the assault doctrine, they just they level everything. Like, there's nothing you can fling Deathwing Knights at that they don't kill. They're so good.
Yeah. I think the one reason, the thing that I didn't put them in number 1 spot is Deathwing are good, like really good. And Ravenwing they're good, they're not as good, but they're good. But the rest of the Dark Angel army is average. Like, yeah, they've got some cool stuff for plasma. Plasma's okay, like in certain builds. But yeah, I think no one actually runs that anymore. It feels like if you're doing competitive Dark Angels, it's Deathwing, and that's it pretty much. And that is just one build that's good. So it's like, yeah, I put them at number 2 for that reason. But they don't deserve it, really. It's like, I think overall, looking at an army, they're good but not great. Like,
yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? It's the thing is the stuff that's great in the army elevates everything, and the fact is that the Deathwing are that good that they drag it up. But again, this is the thing, right? And the reason why I've put them at number 2 is that I think people can build around them. I think people can figure it out. I think Deathwing have not been a top tier army, or rather Dark Angels have not been a top tier army because they had mobility issues. They were being, struggling with lots of horde and things that they weren't necessarily able to cut through fast enough. There are problems with them as an army. Interestingly, obviously, people have kind of come up with newer, more optimized variants of them that utilize specific types of builds that make them even stronger. So there is some very, very strong Dark Angel builds out there, but they're all variants on the Deathwing theme. It's all different flavors of Deathwing. It's not Dark Angels as in Dark Angels. It's just literally the first and second companies rolling up and smashing people, and then everything else is unimaginative. And I think that's the thing, and why I think I've put them number 2 as well, is I just don't think they have the kind of flexibility, or they don't encourage the sort of diverse thinking that I think keeps an army fresh and interesting and keeps them on top. I think this is the thing. There's lots of instances where people have done well against Dark Angel players because they know what they're going to get. And again, it's very swingy when you run things like the Deathwing armies, because some people just roll a lot of 4s. And then at that point you go, oh, I'm losing loads of models. And then it's again, you're mostly relying on your opponent whiffing wounds, which is, which is absurdly strong, but isn't necessarily consistent, I guess. I don't know. I mean, yeah, that's my kind of vibe on it. I love Dark Angels. I think they're easily my favorite army from a lore perspective. But I think, I think they are one of the strongest Space Marine armies, but I just couldn't put them at number 1, Phil.
That's fair enough. Yeah. I mean, what do you rate of their characters? That's the one thing we've not really talked about.
Oh, yeah. So Azrael is a fantastic character in terms of, the history of the character. The sculpt is one of those classic GW sculpts that still looks great. But the problem with Azrael, in my opinion, is that the abilities that he brings to the table in terms of his major benefit is the fact that he has an invuln aura. But so often your army is already rocking native invulns. Obviously, Ravenwing gain invulnerable saves for being Ravenwing, and Terminators gain invulnerable saves for being Terminators. So that aura doesn't necessarily always come to the forefront of your considerations. But he's a cool chapter master, and he's pretty groovy. Ezekiel is, again, probably up there as one of the more interesting psychers. He's a fighty psyker, which is rare, to have a psyker that actually wants to get involved in combat. And Ezekiel is a gorgeous old school sculpt. I mean, that's the same Ezekiel model I've had since 2nd edition. So, that Ezekiel model has done the rounds. Like that is a gorgeous old mini.
It's a model as old as the character.
Exactly. Beyond that, you've got Asmodai, the chaplain. He's all right. I don't think you're very rarely gonna take Asmodai. I like the model. In fact, I really like the model. I think the Asmodai mini's got a real mad, like Doctor Doom vibe to him. I think he's awesome. But I think a regular interrogator chaplain is better than Asmodai, personally. I mean, what's your vibe on Asmodai? Do you even know which one he is?
I don't, actually.
You've never seen him. He's pointing. He's pointing, and he's got his Crozius over his head and some bellowing.
Oh, yeah, no, it's starting to ring a bell.
Yeah. I mean, I do think the regular interrogator chaplain is better than him, but yeah.
Yeah, you've also got the Primaris guy, and you've got
Lazarus,
yeah, and you got Cypher, sort of.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I mean, you can technically take him though, can't you?
Not really in Dark Angels, no. Unless you're doing a Fallen army, but then if you're doing Fallen, you're doing the Fallen. You're not doing Dark Angels.
I always thought he was meant to be one that could go on either army.
No, not anymore. He categorically can't go in Dark Angels.
Oh, right. Okay. Because I'm pretty sure when 8th edition rolled around and they gave him the new model, or no, I guess end of 7th edition, you could.
Yeah. There might have been an instance where you could have chucked him in and themed it as a Fallen army, but that certainly isn't the case right now. You've also got Samael on his jet bike. A mini that looks really good when you see photos of it, but if you've ever tried to assemble it and actually paint it, it's a fine cast monstrosity. And it just, yeah. I like the idea of Samael more than I like the reality of him. And part of me wanted to go out and buy the metal version of him at one point, but then I was like, God, that's going to be even worse.
Yeah. It's a bit like how I've bought Yarek for this doubles event in January, and I'm not looking forward to building him because he's in Finecast.
I mean, fortuitously, mate, how many bits have you got to put on him? You just basically go, claw, stuck here, done.
Yes, yeah, but I do want to convert him up in some way, so I think that's the bit that will be the pain.
A minor grumble, actually. Minor grumble. I ordered 2 chaplains during the chaplain reprint. and I was under the impression that both the chaplains were going to be metal. One of them was Finecast Phil. I was like, no! But fortunately, it was actually a really nice quality cast.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
yeah. And then Belial is a great character, but he's a horrible mini. Like, I don't know anyone who runs Belial with that mini. I think most people just go, here is a Terminator captain with a sword and a gun. He's Belial. Like, it's that Belial mini is rubbish. Unfortunately, it was one of the releases that just didn't quite hit the mark. But I really like the Dark Angels. I just think they're just really strong. I like the synergy between the Raven Wing and the Death Wing. I like the fluff behind them, and I like leaning into that because I've always played Dark Angels, Raven Wing, Death Wing in synergy. That's always been the way that I've played them. Because that's just what the army is to me. Like, I like the hunt. I like them rolling around, looking for Chaos Space Marines, or more specifically, Fallen, getting stuck in with their Deathwing and getting those Fallen Dark Angels to confess their sins. That's it's awesome. It's awesome. But yeah, number 2. So there we go. We're going to move on now to number 1.
Through the stones, glory awaits!
So yeah, it's the Death Watch. We know Phil was Black Templars. We've had a conversation about that. Phil, do you want to have any honourable mentions for the Black Templars at number 1? Final thoughts on them before I talk about Death Watch?
Yeah, like cool models. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, beautiful. So Death Watch are number 1 in my opinion. Remind me, Phil, where was Death Watch for you?
Number 5.
5, yeah. So Death Watch are number 1 for me. So first of all, the Army of Renown that they released for Death Watch is crazy good if you lean into some of the mad aspects of it. The party pod, as I've heard it called, of a firstborn kill team of 10 veterans with Stormbolters rocking up turn 1 and becoming Imperial Fists, and then firing 40 shots with 6s exploding. Every hit is an automatic wound at -1 AP is rather crazy. Just as an example of some of the things you can do with Death Watch. Throw in the fact that the kill teams just allow you so much flexibility, and they've got so many interesting relics and so many different kind of flavors to them. I think there is never going to be a situation where you can't make Death Watch interesting. And I don't think there's ever going to be a situation where you can't build a Death Watch army that could win games or surprise people, because they're just a massive box of tricks. They literally have access to everything in Space Marines except Devastator squads. Oh well. And chapter masters, although they've got their own version of a chapter master, which, interestingly, just to say it again, a watch captain is not a captain, or watch master, sorry, is not a captain. So you can take a watch master and a captain in the same detachment. Fun story. But again, even that as a statement is an example of some of the weird and wonderful ways that you can bring this army to life. It's like the super doctrine is that I can pick what doctrine I'm in. So I can start in the assault doctrine, then roll into tactical. Turn 3, I can be in Devastator. Then I'm back in tactical. Then I'm finishing on assault. Like, there's so much flexibility. Throw in the Army of Renown, where you're just rocking all these other kill teams, and you, at the start of each turn, you can be, cool, this turn we're all Blood Angels, and this turn we're all Imperial Fist, this turn we're all Ultramarines. It's crazy. Throw in the Xenos hunting side of things, the fact that, it's very likely that we're going to start to see a lot of Genestealer Cult, Tau, Elder on the horizon. These guys are going to be having a lovely time exploiting all the wonderful rules that they've got that make them good against those particular types of armies. I just think Death Watch are just so expressive as an army. I think you just do so much with them. It's everything Space Marines have ramped up to 11, essentially. It's like you can neutralize some of the problems with units. You can amplify certain, ways that units play. There's just, they're a very expressive, creative army. And I think the fact that in the 2 years or year and a half since the Death Watch Codex or Codex supplement dropped, in fact, it's only been a year, hasn't it, since the Codex supplement dropped?
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, early doors, everyone was saying Primaris kill teams are the way to go. Loads of Outriders, loads of heavy intercessors. This is the way that you play Death Watch. And now we're seeing people leaning into the Firstborn, doing all this like tricky stuff where they've got like Terminators and then they're using the bikes to sort of like slingshot the units. We're seeing people utilizing the frag cannons and, you know, bringing that into effect. They're still using Primaris kill teams. There's so much cool stuff you can do with Death Watch. I just love them. And they've got loads of cool characters and they've got, you know, unique elements to them. Their war gear is really hilarious. They've got all sorts of mad stuff that they can do that makes things really interesting. It's just, yeah, I love them. Genuinely, it's annoying in a way that they're as good as they are, because I wanted to be able to just say, yeah, Dark Angels for the win. But unfortunately, in my opinion, Death Watch are just too good. But I think the thing with Death Watch is, even though I think they are the best army, I don't think anyone can plug and play them. So maybe Dark Angels is a better pick if you're just trying to plug and play, but Death Watch, I think, is Space Marines. You know, it's a master degree of Space Marines, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I sort of feel like that's why I put them down a bit lower. Like, I get that they're really good. I get the Armies of Renowned was also pretty strong. The downside of that, though, is you're pretty much just taking infantry. You can't take vehicles and dreadnoughts, and obviously
well, you
dreadnoughts.
can take transports. Yeah,
yes.
You can take transports.
Yeah. But
the Black Star.
Corvus Black Star. Yeah.
Corvus Black Star, yes.
Which is a lovely model. Yeah, I love Death Watch as a concept. Like, I came close to buying a Death Watch army, and even to this day, I'm probably at some point going to do a squad at least, plus a Corvus Black Star.
Get a kill team together, mate.
Exactly.
Kill team.
Yeah, that would be actually a good idea. Yeah, I do just love them. I think you're right. They're the least Space Marines, though. Like, if you're playing them, you're pretty much probably playing just kill teams of various sorts, and you're not taking all the normal stuff, like a squad of just general Hellblasters or a squad of Blade Guard. I mean, I'm sure you can, right? Because they get access to all of that. But it feels like everyone just taps into that kill team thing. And it's a bit like my point about Dark Angels is the bits that they do well, they do really well, but the rest is just not as good. Although with Death Watch, the standard kind of chapter tactic rules work much better with the whole army as opposed to Death Watch, which is good for a few things and not everything. But you're right. I do think they're like a much harder army to play and to play like really well. But their versatility, like they're the Swiss Army knife of Space Marines. Like, they can do pretty much everything, which is cool, but also like a downside to an extent because it's requires brain power and planning.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I don't think you can just throw one of these armies together and win with it. And I think even if you were to go online and look up some of the best players and observe their lists, I don't think you could just go, cool, I'm going to just replicate that and run it, because I don't think you would know half of what it takes to make that run well. But there's just so many weird little quirky elements to them. Like, take a Firstborn kill team, chuck in a Vanguard vet, all of a sudden you can access the Melter Bomb stratagem. The Melter Bomb stratagem is a bucket load, well, not bucket load, but it's a load of extra little mortal wounds, adds a little bit of flavor there. You take the Terminator with Thunderhammer Storm Shield, you add the durability, you take the bike to give them the extra movement, so as you can use that as a kind of catapult to move things around. You take the Black Shield, so now all of a sudden you've got access to heroic interventions within the squad, which catches a lot of people off guard. You can do the mix of units where you can have bikes that all of a sudden can phase shift through walls because, you know, they're counted as a mixed unit and effectively are treated like infantry when interacting with terrain features. You've got, you know, other weird little things like you can chuck a jump pack unit into a kill team of heavy intercessors and now they can fall back and shoot. There's all sorts of like crazy stuff that you can add to the army that just, really just ups their game in so many ways. And yeah, that's why I think for me, Death Watch are number one, because I think they're a real players' army, and I think they're an army that offers a lot of flexibility and a lot of choice. And I think that's really where I've come at this from, is like, yeah, sure, they need to be good, but I think they also need to offer you choices. And I think that's where I'm at with Death Watch. And admittedly, Space Wolves have even more options. And at one point I was debating putting Space Wolves at the top of the list, but you've never really seen Space Wolves achieve that level of success because they're just not quite as optimized for being super high end, because their units have certain limitations based on how they interact in the game.
It's like, but their choices, so they've got things like, Wolf and Thunder, Wolf Cavalry, but when it comes to kill teams, it's like you can pick and mix a bunch of units to go into that. You could, have 5 heavy intercessors or 5 eradicators plus your normal guys. Like you can cherry pick your loadout so much more, even though they're units everyone gets access to. But by being able to add in all of those units in a combination, and in doing so unlock extra abilities for that unit, it's like that's hundreds, if not thousands, of like different combinations you could have throughout your entire army. That is way more than the Space Wolves.
Yeah,
but
that's where the complexity comes in, and why it's not super duper easy. I think that's the thing. I think if you were a new 40k player or someone new to Space Marines somehow, and you were looking for a sort of easy, high end Marine army, I'd probably recommend Dark Angels, Space Wolves, or Ultramarines before I said Death Watch. But I think if you're someone who's been with the game for a long time and thinks they want to kind of express some of their more creative ideas, I think Death Watch have those. But I think you can do good things with all these Space Marine variants. I think that's still the main takeaway from all of this, is that the margins that alter my perspective between the number 1 and the number 13 spot are minimal, because they're still Space Marines and they still got access to so many more options and so many more things than any other range in 40k.
They are several other codexes combined into one with the amount of data sheets that they've got, which is crazy. I just want to say I'm just so glad and quite surprised that you didn't put Dark Angels at number 1.
Wait, did you have all your arguments ready? You were like, right, when he says it, I'll tell him.
A little bit, yeah.
No, that's fair, mate. No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much for acknowledging my restraint in that regard. But I think that's the thing. I think I genuinely, because I think someone will solve the Dark Angel riddle, or I think people have solved the Dark Angel riddle. I think there's a thing. I don't think Dark Angels are ever going to necessarily surprise people, but I think Dark Angels do really well as a gatekeeper army. I think of all the Dark Space Marine armies, I think, you're always going to expect Dark Angels to reside in that kind of mid-tier, but I think you would be surprised if they consistently came to the top, I suppose. But I mean, they do now and again. It's not to say that people don't win with Dark Angels. I mean, they do, but I think I don't know. I just think Death Watch are more fun. I think there's more interesting stuff you can do with Death Watch. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, completely. I'd be surprised if people are winning a Dark Angels army without Deathwing or without Ravenwing. It's gonna have one, if not both, of those parts in it. The rest of the so-called Green Wing is completely superfluous when it comes to a competitive Dark Angel army. So I think that's a thing that really lets them down. Like, they really need to lean into those first and second companies to do well.
The other thing I really like about the Death Watch is the narrative surrounding them, and the fact that you can also inject a bit of extra flavor by assigning them agents of the Imperium. I think, the fact that the Death Watch are this force of the Inquisition, means that you can obviously layer in other aspects of the Inquisition. So you can add those Order Xenos Inquisitors. You could potentially look at the Ordo cartographica, the stuff that we were talking about with the rogue traders.
Oh, yeah,
adding in that kind of element.
Adeptus, was it? Yeah, something cartographica.
Yeah, but you could look at maybe adding those in. Admittedly, I don't think you probably would, but then equally you could see some synergies with, units of scions and things like that, them collaborating with other elite, Imperial forces. I think that kind of stuff is really interesting and really, would add to the flavor of the army. I think that's the thing I quite like about Death Watch is there's also opportunities to, weave narratives into them and add those things. Whereas it's like Dark Angels, it's like the idea of an Inquisitor turning up alongside Dark Angels is like, nah, mate. It's like that's not happening.
Yeah.
Or fair enough, maybe the Ultramarines and obviously things like the Minotaurs, fine. Like they're gonna get in there, but I just think that's the thing. I think there's certain fluffy things that you can feel okay about doing with Death Watch.
Yeah, completely. That's what I've always said. Like, I'd just like to have a squad because I always thought it'd be a good bolt on to my guard army, basically, just because they sort of fit in quite narratively as like a literal kill team, just rocking up and doing stuff as opposed to a Death Watch army.
And I think that's the only other thing I'd like to have seen for Death Watch. I think if I was able to have another go at them, I would have loved to have seen some rules that allowed them to more effortlessly be added into other Imperial forces. Like, I'd love it if they became agents of the Imperium themselves. Like, if the kill teams were all agents of the Imperium, so you could just add one to a guard army or add one to a Mechanicus army, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much you could do with that. Like, I've always loved the idea of just literally adding a single Custodes army to my guard as like an advisor, because that's exactly what one Custodes needs to be. I don't need a whole army of them. I just need one of them. And likewise, one squad of Death Watch is all you should need in terms of reinforcing your guard army to win the day. So you can, add some kind of mechanic like that would be so cool. Like, stipulate it that you can only add in like one unit, not 10, for example.
Yeah.
Would be really
well. Again, just give them a stratagem, right? Which is like, it's a 2 CP stratagem. Give this unit agents of the Imperium. Done. And then boom, we're off to the races. But there you go. That was our top 10 rundown of the Space Marines. A little different than the last time, although to be fair, similar kind of results. Black Templars did better, so that's nice. I mean, in Phil's case, they're number 1.
Exactly. They did the top spots. I do have, before we go, some honourable mentions.
All right. Shall we transition into honourable mentions?
Your duty is not done, brother!
All right, Phil, we're doing the honourable mentions, mate. So you were insistent upon shouting out the stuff that wasn't in the core codex. So go on then, mate. What are the honourable mentions you think? What would have made the list had it not been that you had to not include them?
In no particular order. First one is the Grey Knights, because they are actual Space Marines, so they do belong in the list, even though they're not within the codex.
Where would you, if you could have bumped them or put them anywhere, where would you have put Grey Knights if they could have been an option?
I mean, after I read the rules for them, probably number 1. Like,
flipping heck, you think they supersede all Marines?
Well, I think currently they would easily sit in the top 5. Put it that way.
Oh, without a doubt.
I think they, or even the top 3. Maybe not number 1, probably number 2, if not number 1. I think they're going to be super strong at the moment. Like the amount of mortal wounds that they can do, psychic shenanigans. Plus, they still have access to, well, not all the Space Marine stuff, a lot of the Space Marine stuff. I think
they don't have access to very much Space Marine stuff at all.
Okay, but they're still sort of Space Marines, right? They're
I mean, they're old school, right? They get the Land Raiders, the old school Dreadnoughts, the Flyers, so they get the Storm Raven, the Storm Talon, and the Storm Hawk. They get the Rhino Razorback, and that's it in terms of marine stuff. Other than that, they've got servitors, I suppose. There you go, servitors.
There we go. The quintessential unit for scoring, rod or whatever.
Most Grey Knight players rock a healthy amount of servitor units just because they're cheap and, obseccy, or not even obseccy because they haven't got obsec, but they're actionable. You chuck them out and they go, retrieve Octaria's data, yay!
Yeah, but they've got Terminators, although they're Grey Knight specific Terminators, and they've got a bunch of Marines like the Intercessors, which sound like other type of Intercessors, but they're not.
Very handy, isn't it? How the naming convention works like that.
Yeah, I think they got some great movement. They've got a bunch of units with like cool close combat capabilities, which effectively are Vanguard vets with jump packs, but they're little teleporter devices instead. You got the big old Dread Knights, which I think are really strong. Psychic powers for days, basically.
Oh yeah, Grey Knights are crazy good. They're let down at the moment by Abhor the Witch, because obviously, if you're playing Grand Tournament, most people aren't bringing any Psychers to account for the influx of Grey Knights and Thousand Suns. So you do have the issue that you're probably going to concede 15 points pretty consistently every game. So that definitely puts them on a bit of a downward trend. And in terms of their kind of model options, I think again they're quite limited. Like, okay, fair enough, they've come up with a number of ways of really stretching that single box of powered armored Space Marines that they've got, because you can have the teleporty ones, the heavy ones, the normal ones. Okay, cool, but I think that's the thing. I think the thing is about them is it's obviously Dread Knights or bust with those guys. It seems to be take loads and loads of Dread Knights and and you're in business, which is cool. I mean, I'm not against that necessarily, and I do think that they're strong because of all the psychic powers, and I think that the mortal wound output that they have is pretty crazy. They very sensibly came in real quick and neutralized some of the absurd levels of power that these guys had, but strangely, when I see a Grey Knight army across the table from me in any kind of tournament setting, I don't massively worry about it. I just sort of look at it and go, yeah, all right, cool. Grey Knights. It's like, I'm never massively worried about Grey Knights. And to the best of my recollection, I don't think I've ever lost to any Grey Knight armies yet. But that might be wrong. I might have lost to one. I don't know. I think I've played about 3 or 4 Grey Knights since this book dropped.
You did with your Elder Flyer spam at the GT. Didn't you lose to a Grey Knight player one time?
Well, yes, but I'm talking about now in terms of the current version of them.
Edition. Okay.
Yeah. No, I've lost to Grey Knights plenty of times in the fullness of time. That has occurred. And that lad who beat me with those Grey Knights at the Grand Tournament finals was very good, to be fair. Not that I'm bitter about it or anything. But I feel like that. Anyway, let's not get into it. Because that was actually a really great game. It's just I felt like it was one that I lost rather than he won. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't want to be bitter about it, because I'm not bitter about it. It was fantastic, but it was Anyway, there you go. Bringing up old wounds there, Phil.
I'm sorry, my bad. Have you got an honourable mention?
The various Forge World variants, I think.
As you mentioned that, my other honourable mention was the Minotaurs.
Well, of course. I love the Minotaurs as well. I think they were quite I think of all the Forge World armies, though, I mean, not to dismiss your beautiful Minotaurs. I think of all the Forge World Space Marines, Minotaurs are probably the ones I'm least interested in of all of the. I think if I was going to do, I've got a Blood Ravens army, so you would argue that seemingly I like Blood Ravens, but the truth is I don't really. I just happen to really like the way that Tom from Garage Hammer Tactics or whatever it's called painted them, and he was selling them relatively cheaply, so I just couldn't resist. But But yeah, I'd say Red Scorpions are my favorite of the Forge World chapters.
I do really like Red Scorpions, and I think at one point I was close to being swayed to collect them because they appear in Siege of Vrax with the old Krieg, but Minotaurs also appear with them in the Fall of Orpheus book, which was literally the reason why I now collect them. That one book has ingrained itself into my memory. So yeah, that's why I chose them. But I do think they've got some good characters. They've got really good Contemptor character. The Chaplain and Asterion Moloch, the Chapter Master, he's all right. I don't think he's by any means super good, but I think he's sort of suffers from the relative, I don't know, downplay of some of the Forge World characters. Like, they've definitely not gone out their way to try and make them good, it seems. They're just okay.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with the Minotaurs specifically, is like they've got some really gorgeous sculpts and they've got some really nice looking stuff, but nothing about them makes me go, oh, they're a must have. And then I have the same problem with the Blood Ravens. The Blood Ravens have Gabriel Angelos, and you look at Gabriel Angelos and you go, he's not a great looking mini. Like, you know, I'll just say they've really not done a great job.
Well, I think all the Forge World stuff now looks quite dated. But and they're a lot smaller than especially up against the Primaris stuff now. So now the Primaris stuff is out, they just all look a bit small. And I think Gabriel Angelos was probably a bit on the small side even when he first came out. I don't know. He never seemed like a great mini that wowed me over.
Yeah, something about the face sculpt just doesn't really work for me. He's got a very sort of odd looking. He's a great mini other than the face, I think, but his face definitely lets him down. Especially when the obviously the character as he appears in the Dawn of War video games is quite a sort of distinctive, very sort of chiseled set of features. In this, he just sort of looks a little bit sort of But regardless of the model itself, though, I think the Blood Ravens are sort of let down by things like Gabriel Angelos. You go, cool, Gabriel Angelos, and you run in with him, and you go like, oh, he's all right. He's not extraordinary. Whereas with the Red Scorpions have got Severin Loth. Severin Loth is fantastic. He's like a Primaris librarian, but a Primaris librarian that will beat the snot out of you. He's fantastic. And Carib Cullen the Risen is got so many like weird opportunities to do weird things because he's a dreadnought character. It's those kind of things with the flexibility of making it anything Space Marine is super interesting.
Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits of kind of chapters and love, like Minotaurs and Red Scorpions, but they're not locked into a specific successor chapter. So I'm glad they didn't do that, and that you can get the tactical flexibility of picking and choosing, even though, as you rightly pointed out earlier, I've never done that, and I've stuck with my White Skulls.
That Minotaur chaplain character, what's his name?
Oh god, what is it off the top of my head?
Is it? I've got them in front of me here. You've got Moloch, and then you've got Enconomy.
Yeah, it's that one. Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
Yeah, whatever it is. Don't like that mini.
No, I'm not a fan of it. And like with both of them, I plan on making Primaris-ified, like just other sculpts of them. I think I'd plan to convert one of the Indomitus chaplains into him. Just so I know you don't like Primaris / Firstborn mixing, but yeah, just not wowed by that particular model.
I mean, I don't massively mind in the case of like, it depends how you're going to do it. But yeah, in that instance, I wouldn't overly mind if you turn around and said, oh, he's a Primaris chaplain now, whatever. Like, cool. I mean, again, yeah, I think this is the thing. It's like, I understand when you got minis that sort of look that way and you want to try and kind of elevate them and there's sort of spirit and also their characters, right? So I don't really care what they look like when they're characters, especially when they're characters that are that unique, because I'm like, well, that's the character. Cool, fine. As I say, my frustration with people who primarify normal units is the fact that like there is existing models, but also it annoys me when you end up in situations where they're so ambiguous about what it is, or they end up in situations where they've got different versions of primarified versions of units, and you're like, well, is that Primaris? No, it's Firstborn. Okay, is that Primaris? Yeah, that is. Okay, flipping it. I think in those instances, people need to be more clean cut.
Yeah,
I
mean, I can't remember the rules, but I know there's a crusade mechanic where you can upgrade a character to cross the Rubicon and become a Primaris model. Whether you can do that to named characters, I can't remember. But then I could legitimately run him as a Primaris model because he literally is Primarisified in the rules if I was to play him in Crusade, which would be quite cool.
I saw someone did a Primaris version of the Kakaradon, the space shark character.
Oh yeah, they're a cool chapter.
They're quite interesting. So yeah, I mean the Forge World chapters are pretty interesting. I mean in terms of the White Dwarf ones, I always kind of like the Exorcists. I felt like they were pretty cool.
They were my last honourable mention, the Exorcist, and that was well, weirdly they are technically a Forge World chapter as well, I guess, because they appeared in the Bad Apple at one point. Yeah, when we went through the rules, they were the standout one as these are really cool. They've got really cool, not just the background, like the actual rules are pretty good. They're very themed, if I remember, against like psychers and demons, maybe more specifically towards demons and psychers. But if it was against psychers, you've got things like Grey Knights, you've got, things like Elder probably going to be coming to the forefront once their codex gets released.
That's what James Workshop said in his latest video, didn't he?
Exactly. Yeah. So, I think they've got just some cool abilities. I don't know. I can't see demons ever becoming like the go-to, tournament army. But these would be a great counter.
I totally disagree.
Oh well, I guess you've got Be'lakor and you've got his armies of renown.
Demons are still to come, though, aren't they? They got a book inbound soon, I'm sure. They haven't had an update for ages.
No, you're right. Actually, they don't. So yeah, maybe when that book drops, everyone paint your Marines red. Dark red, not Blood Angel red.
No, indeed. Not. Well, yeah, sort of more Flesh Terror red, I suppose.
Yes, but not quite Flesh Terror red. Yeah,
not quite. Somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Now, again, they had some good war gear options on them for sure, and I thought they had. I remember going through those armies with you, and I definitely seem to remember they were pretty cool. I remember like the Imperial Spears or whatever they were called, the Emperor Spears. They were pretty unremarkable.
Tomb Keepers was
Tome
Keepers.
Keepers.
Get it wrong. Tome Keepers because they were cool because they had characters like
they're the White Dwarf chapter.
Yeah, that was, and they were actually pretty cool. Like, they've got built-in relics basically, so you're not paying.
Well, they had specific characters that had specific builds, right?
Yes, yeah. So it basically means you can have regular guys with relics plus these named characters with relics as well. So if you want a relic heavy army, that would be the one to go for.
Yeah, there's lots of interesting things you can do with the Marines at the minute. I think, obviously it's not a shocker given the fact that, Games Workshop effectively makes all its money from selling Marines by all accounts. I mean, it is the thing, isn't it? But hey, there you go. That was us going through the various Marine-y flavored things. We hope you enjoyed it. And we're going to move on now to the next part of the show, which is pretty much the end. The end of the show. Transitional noise. Woo! All right then, Philip. It's the end of the show. Although you know better than that. You do, specifically, Phil, because, you have to sit through this every week. We're going to talk about some stuff. So this week's been all very exciting from the kind of announced perspective. They had the Black Library event where they talked about some books. Everyone likes books. But more importantly, people like models. They've got models and they've got rules coming out from all directions for the upcoming codexes. Most specifically, Tau. Are you excited, Phil, for the Tau rules? Are you like going, ooh, yay, Tau rules?
No, they look pretty good. And yeah, Tau. It's Tau, isn't it?
I think one of the problems I've got consistently with the way that Games Workshop is doing game design at the moment, and I think I've laboured this point quite extensively over the course of the year, but I'll just make it again. I think one of the things that's really interesting is because Games Workshop appears to want to create more balance within the way that they design armies. I think they do a lot of things to effectively overcome an army's archetype. And by that, I mean that they're essentially putting in mechanics into armies that effectively enable them to offset their weaknesses. And I think that's one of the things that's really interesting about it from a kind of design perspective, because rather than just tolerating the fact that Tau, when they get into combat, have a really hard time and start to lose minis, and that they had to normally kind of compensate for that problem, the fact now that they can effectively go, we don't care, we're going to just keep shooting you, is like, it's kind of one of those things where you're like, guys, like, we do kind of need Tau to have a weakness. Like, we need every army to have a weakness. The point of the Marines was that they were good at everything but not great. Every army had an archetype before, whereas it feels now with the ways of the right rules, they're just really keen to throw buffs and benefits at these units so as they just can do everything, it seems. And that's what I'm getting from the Tau rules. I'm just like, good lord.
I mean, it's hard to say because they always just give us a few things, but not necessarily the whole context for it. So it's a bit like the Custodes rules that they gave us. We were like, what does this mean? Is this good? How does it work? Because they gave us like half a rule, but not the rest to give us the wider context of it. The Tau stuff seems to be they're encouraging Tau to get closer to that enemy to make their stuff more powerful, so they're not just sitting back and shooting, which is their normal game plan. It'll be because their normal downside is close combat, so it'll be interesting to see how they're going to compensate for that, or if they have to sort of take the hit and then fall back and shoot, for example, if they're Montcar. I think that's one of the rules they can do. In a way, it's a cool mechanic that is sort of turn related, so depending on which one you have, the benefit lasts for maybe like turn 1 to 3 or 3 to 5, but at the same time it feels like that's another overly complicated layer mechanic that it's like more complex than the Space Marine stuff, where say Space Marine like rules per turn seem pretty straightforward.
Yeah I think that's the thing. It's like I struggle to get excited about rules for 9th edition because they just feel like everything's just getting everything and everyone's just getting powerful, and it's like, and again, I get it, right? They're trying to get us excited and they're trying to create things that make us go, oh wow, I'm really excited, I can't wait to see these, I'm gonna buy them, I'm gonna play them. But at the same time, I've just got to that point where I'm like, so the Tower are gonna come out and they're gonna be good at everything because everything's good at everything. No one's really bad at anything anymore. It's like, the mechanics of the game never really factor into anyone's game plan. It's like, you can't advance and charge, but you can. You can't leave combat and shoot, but you can. You can't leave combat and charge, but you can.
Like there's almost not a single army that plays using the standard rules mechanics, because at least either via a stratagem or a unit, they have rules that circumvent the standard rules. Pretty much at the moment, probably with the exception of Guard. And it'll be interesting to see if they stick to their archetype of, no, this is how they play. Like they can't break the mechanics of the rules, basically. Like they just have to stick to it, but maybe they just do what they do better. Or will they suddenly get the ability to do all of these things? To be fair, though, I've been desperate for fallback and shoot on vehicles because it's just frustrating for the way that, for tank heavy armies because of that restriction. So I'm not a fan of that anyway, but I'm not necessarily a fan of that as a rule mechanic from the get-go. I'm more concerned probably about the rule that did they preview it for the Wave Serpent? No, they didn't.
No, that leaked. You can only win it on falls.
Yeah, let's not talk about them because that's not necessarily true. But I saw that and was like, dear God, I hope that's not true.
It probably is.
Because Games Workshop love Elder and they love a Wave Serpent, and there's not been a
They do.
single
They love a Wave
there's not been a
Serpent build.
single edition when the Codex hasn't come out and Wave Serpents don't feel broken.
Yeah, that's broadly true. The Wave Serpent has been consistently strong, it's fair to say. I think the thing that's interesting, isn't it, that and you raised a really interesting point there with regards to no army really worries about the core rules. And I think that is one of the things about 40k that is becoming quite discouraging, and why I really can't wait for them to reset everything. Like, I actually really hope that 10th edition, when it comes along, is as big of a shift as 8th edition. Like, I genuinely think we need a purge and a restart again, because, and I think the 10th edition is the edition to do it in, right? Like, it's literally like, actually, sorry everyone, we're starting again, because like 9th edition's just horrible. It's like, the rules are irrelevant. It's like, it's literally no one plays by the rules. And literally, with the way the game is played, certainly even like at competitive events, I could literally say anything to anyone. Like, I am confident that I have never challenged anyone on anything they've told me when it comes to a stratagem, because I'm just like, yeah, of course that exists. You know, it's like when someone says to me, "Oh, I've paid 2 CP and I advance a charge," I just go, "Yeah, all right, sure." I mean, that's almost certainly true.
The only time in recent memory that I've done it was at the Rapid Fire Wargaming event when I was up against Grey Knight's Topper, because he basically has so you target a Dread Knight, it can then teleport off to somewhere else on the table. And he was saying like, oh, so I was shooting out with my 3 rapiers because they're a unit. He was like, well, as long as one of them can shoot, that unit has to target it. And I was like, well, what about the other 2, right? And he was like, well, no, they just can't shoot. And I was like, can I just double check the wording? And the way I interpreted it was, if they're not eligible, they can shoot at something else. And I was like, well, because they're a squad, right? So they can still split fire. So it's not like their shots are just wasted. So I can just shoot at the other Dread Knight that's there. And he was like, okay, yeah, that seems like a better interpretation of the rule.
But again, we end up in these situations where all we're doing is negotiating these little nuances, and that's my frustration with it, is like the way that they've designed the rules and the way that they consistently release codex releases just means that everything does everything, and the core rules are, you know, the engine that powers 40k is the loosest thing you've ever heard. Like the real engine of 40k is stratagems and codexes. Like the rule set is superfluous. Like literally, there's very little in the actual rules that matters ever in the game.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think if they were to do 10th edition, I wonder if they would release not all the codexes, but they would go, here's all the indexes for all the armies, because I think, and this is maybe just been exacerbated by COVID and, you know, the world situation, but the slow rollout of the codexes, I think, has been the most frustrating part of 9th edition. And potentially once all the codexes are out, yeah, you know, there might well be gripes that we can have, but at least everyone should be on a relatively level playing field in terms of power level.
Well, everyone will be doing everything together.
But but I think that would be a better situation than we're currently in. But so I feel like they would have to address that whenever they do a new edition now. And I think actually people hark back to 8th edition and going, well, that was a really good time when, you know, everyone got an index. Wasn't that great? Like, even, you know, it cost like a 10 or 15 quid. It just tided us over until our codex actually came out. And I think people, I mean, I look back at that and I was like, that seemed like a great time to be alive and playing 40k. Like, it felt like it was, you know, I don't know, it just felt like a good way of doing a codex, a games edition rollout.
Yeah, I agree.
Rather than what they always tend to do, which is, yeah, keep your old codexes and wait, you know, X amount of time.
Yeah. But that's the problem, though, isn't it? Because one of the major problems of 9th edition is it's inherited all the bloated horribleness from from 8th. Like 8th by the end was such a Frankenstein monster of a rule set. And 9th didn't really address that. It just sort of let that continue to be the case, and still is in some instances to this day. It's like, yeah, okay, Custodians are on the horizon, but if you want to run a Custodians army now, it's a mess. If you want a Harlequins army, good Lord, it's a mess. You've got to have a white dwarf or a obscure, issue of sorry, no, it wasn't actually what they ended up doing it in one of the psychic storm, whatever.
They didn't do it in Psychic Awakening. It was a white dwarf. You were right the first time.
So again, it's just messy. It's like we've ended up in this place where, unfortunately, the end of 8th edition was really, really sloppy, and 9th has never really recovered from that because. And again, it felt to me like with 8th edition, what 9th edition was them answering all the problems they created in 8th edition, which they obviously interpreted as a bunch of kind of in-game mechanics that restricted what armies could do, because you could wrap people or you could use leadership debuffs or stuff to be like beneficial. Like, 9th edition was literally them going, here is the definitive version of 8th, where we've solved all the 8th edition problems that people said they had. But then they went on to write new codexes and things that just introduced new problems. And it's like, it just becomes one of these weird things where I genuinely just don't believe that they've got a genuine like strategy for creating these systems. I think they're just slapping codexes into the system and just going, it's open enough, you can do whatever you want. And I see that with Tau. I look at it and go, cool, Tau will do whatever they want. Great, cool, wonderful. Like, playing Tau is going to be like playing every other game in 40k. It's like, I'm going to try and do something with it, and they're going to go, oh no, I can do this thing because stratagem. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, of course. Like, and that's 40k right now. It's just it's yeah. Again, I've said it many times. It's kids running around the playground claiming that they've got a force field and that you've got a weapon that breaks that force field, but their force field is immune to that weapon. And that's what 40k has become. It's just wailing children in a playground.
The old Infinity +1.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But again, not to be too bitter on it, because again, I think, the new Dark Strider model looks gorgeous. I mean, fair play to them. The new Tau Dark Strider Mini. Top shelf. And obviously they're teasing Elder quite consistently at the moment. Definitely a Warp Smith on the way.
Yeah, the Christmas advent calendar is 90% Elder, it seems.
Well, with a little bit of chaos. So as I heard on the rumor mill, they're doing like some dual box set, which basically is going to be upsetting to Chaos Space Marine players from what the rumor mill says, because the Chaos Space Marine will get a Warp Smith and then a bunch of pre-existing Chaos Space Marine kits. And then the Elder side of it will be loads of new Elder stuff.
Interesting, because normally with those box sets is all old models bar the characters.
Yeah.
But yeah, if Elder is getting a full plastic refresh, it sort of makes sense that they would do it in that box, I guess.
Well, based on the rumors that I've seen banded around in Discord servers and other places, the Elder aren't getting a full range refresh, but they are getting a lot of new stuff.
Oh yeah,
or not a lot of new stuff, a lot of refreshes. So it seems like the consensus is
but it'd be like Necrons. Like, they didn't update every model, but they're updating, a good chunk of them. And I'm sure some of the stuff that they leave in like Finecast or what have you will get a refresh, like maybe in a year's time or so. A bit like Sisters got like a 2-part range release.
It'd be nice to see a new Warp Smith though for the Chaos Space Marines, because the Warp Smith Mini is actually still really cool.
Yeah.
So an updated version of one of them, I'm excited about that. I assume that's what it is with the snappy mouth tendril that they've got in the sneak peek. Plus, also people on the internet saying that's what it is, and they seem very well informed. So who am I to argue with the collective mind of the internet?
They in the rumor engine, months ago they previewed clearly a Warp Smith model based on some of the parts. So yeah, it would make sense that it would be a Warp Smith.
But they've also, as part of the Black Library of Ilfil, they put out some new heresy minis.
Oh,
They've got,
yes. Fafnir Ran.
I don't know Fafnir Ran.
I don't either, but the model is drop dead gorgeous.
Do you like the fact that he's got that kind of train conductor type vibe to him?
Do you mean airfield runway conductor?
Oh, maybe that's the thing. Yeah, absolutely. He's got a sort of chucks
well,
away vibe to him.
I don't know if you might remember one of my models that I kitbashed for my veteran intercessors, where he's a guy. It was I kitbashed was it lieutenant, lieutenant, or was it a captain? The first Crusade, not Crusade. Yes, the Crusade. No, Conquest magazine. There was that limited edition model. That was a lieutenant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I took that and then gave him 2 hammers that were I think Corvus hammers, but I switched them around so you got the flat end of them. So this guy looks very similar to a model that I've kitbashed.
Nice.
But this guy with the dual hammers just looks so cool.
Dual axes.
Sorry, yeah. My guy was dual hammers. This guy's dual axes.
Oh yeah, he looks amazing, and you know the face on him is again, it's a really unique looking human head on this Marine. A nice beardy gentleman.
Exactly. Apparently, the founder of the Exorcists.
That checks out, given the fact that he's got the chapter symbol of the Exorcist on him.
Well, I watched the show. That's what they said. But
look at
I was
that.
like, oh, you can paint them up reds. Make a little, even though it wouldn't actually technically be him because he would be dead now in 40k. But yeah, make it the current chapter master or whoever.
He looks incredible. I think again, just there's very little that you can fault on this mini. I think as well when you realise that obviously this is a new Horus Heresy sculpt, so it's going to be scaled more appropriately with modern day Primaris minis. I think he's just going to look phenomenal. Yeah. And
my one nitpick is that there's a helmet strapped to the shield at the back, and it's only a nitpick because I would like the option to run him with a helmet on, which I assume you can't do if you can't remove the helmet from the shield.
Yes,
if you could do, and there was also a helmeted version of him, I'd be like, brilliant.
I'd also be interested in understanding the rules for him utilizing that shield, because clearly it's going to be something of a process transitioning to that with the 2 axes. I mean, he seems a bit heavily laden.
Well, he doesn't need to carry the shield. He just literally walks backwards.
Fair enough.
Well, it's just like the blade guards. You know, they've got swords and pistols, and I mean, at least with the pistol, you can put it away. Like, where do you put your other axe?
That is true. I suppose that's the thing, actually, as well, because you could very easily represent this as a Primaris captain with Storm Shield and Power Sword. Like, it wouldn't be especially difficult to roll this into a current Space Marine army. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be buying this mini and incorporating them into their collection. And fortuitously, I mean, you know, okay, fair enough, he's got quite some significant Imperial Fist iconography on his banner and on his shoulder pads. But, you know, I'm assuming that those shoulder pads will be relatively interchangeable, and clipping off that backpack isn't going to be, or rather clipping off the
back banner.
The back banner isn't going to be especially difficult. Okay, fair enough. He's got some fist markings on the axe and stuff, but I imagine you could do some stuff with him.
You could just
relatively
trim that off quite easily.
Yeah. He's cool, man. And then the other lad, who I know actually much better. I'm quite familiar with old Zephon. So Zephon, if you don't know Phil, he is a crippled blood angel. So effectively what happened to him is he had been involved in some wars, and he'd lost more or less all his limbs, and he had them replaced with bionics. But the problem that he had is that his bionics didn't fuse properly with his mind effectively. So his bionics were super, super bad. So even though he continued to serve as a blood angel, he was stationed on Terra and effectively was more of a sort of representative of the blood angels within the confines of Terra. And he was effectively recruited by the Emperor and by the Custodes to go into the webway during the events of or the events that preceded Magnus's betrayal, as it would be called. So obviously the whole sequence of events is there's loads of demons flooding into the webway, attacking the not the unnumbered sons, that's definitely different, attacking the 10,000, the Custodes inside the webway that lead into the Imperial Palace. And Zephon went with the Custodes. I won't reveal why he went or what the reason was that he went, but essentially during the events of that, he found himself hanging out with the tech priest Arkan Land, who famously, found the plans for the Land Raider. He's a very, very competent tech priest, and he essentially goes, "I'm pretty bored. May as well see if I can fix all your bionics." And
few drops of oil later.
Yeah, he sort of jerry rigs some kind of like weird like thing, and basically completely transforms Zephon from this effectively hopeless individual back into this fully fledged Space Marine warrior.
Did he become the $1 million man?
Effectively, yeah, and I mean, he definitely proved his worth in the events of that particular story. So in I forget which story I'm referencing now. It's the one about the Emperor. I think it's Emperor of Mankind or Master of Mankind. He's apparently also involved in the Siege of Terra. I don't know in what capacity because I haven't got around to listening to or reading Siege of Terra, but his accolades within the events of Master of Mankind are pretty up there. He's they mention
he's pretty good. They talk about that he gets recruited by Malkador and fights alongside Custodes, and he's got more of a story arc in the new book, Saturnine.
Yeah. I've forgotten what his he had like a really ominous extra title. He was called something like the Bringer of Woe or something.
Cool.
Something really.
That's very Space Vampire.
The Bringer of Sorrow. The Bringer of Sorrow is what he was called. So I love that sculpt. I'm the jump pack's amazing as well, though, right? Like, I mean, that's a mad old jump pack.
Pretty ornate. I mean, I'm less of a fan of this sculpt in comparison to the other one. I think it's just that classic Vanguard vet sort of pose of, they're meant to be flying with jump packs, so let's just stick them on a rock, looking like they're launching off. It just really reminds me of those 40k models. So, I mean, I think the helmeted version is the weaker of the two. Like his actual face, like the painted up version, I think is of his helmetless version is actually really good. And like the way they've done the kind of cracks on the pauldron look really cool. His face looks incredible.
Yeah. No, again, he's got a lot of attitude, doesn't he? I mean, it's amazing when you see like a blood angel that really kind of personifies that space vampire vibe in a way that's actually quite interesting. He's a really charismatic character as well in the Horus Heresy novels. He's difficult not to like. He winds up the Custodes loads. Like that's the thing I really enjoy about him is he's always jabbing at him. He's like, "What are you on about?" I'm into it. I'm probably gonna pick up Zephon. I'm probably gonna let old Ran pass me by, but Zephon looks pretty cool.
Nice.
I dig it. But yeah, so there's a lot going on that side of things. I mean, it's exciting to imagine what we're going to be treated to as part of the kind of Christmas reveals and things that they love to do. Obviously, myself and Phil are going to be putting out an episode on Christmas Day because it happens to be on a Saturday. And that's going to be about what, Phil?
Oh, we're going to be doing a retrospective of the year, looking back, seeing what we thought about the edition. I mean, you've already got a preview of Dan's opinion of 9th edition, so it will just be more of that, I guess.
Yes, yeah. And our predictions for the
Oh,
future,
yeah.
which again you've also got a bit of a preview of throughout this episode. But we're gonna reflect on a few things. I think it's been a really interesting year. This one, this has been an exciting project for us because we went weekly, and I've been relatively consistent in my critique of that decision over the last few months because it's definitely been wearing on me.
You almost got away with not mentioning it this week for the first time.
I know. But I'm trying to seed the narrative with people so as they understand why we're doing it. I don't want people being all like, "Oh, you've let me down." I'm trying to be consistent with that story. But the point is that it's been an interesting project. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how the pod has grown and obviously what we're hoping to do with it next year. So that's a big thing really that we want to try and address with everyone is what our aspirations are in the year of 2022, what we're aiming to offer in way of entertainment versus what we've done this year. Again, I won't spoil it because we're going to talk about it in the next episode. And then most importantly, and this is something that we're going to start teasing moving forwards across our social media, so you're going to be hearing a lot about this over the next couple of weeks, is our end of the year quiz. We're super excited to be doing that again. So yeah, we're really, really keen to start, promoting that and pushing that. My goal is 2,000 views on the YouTube. That's what I want to achieve with that one, Phil. That's my wild ambition.
Well, that'd be good. I mean, we just need all our listeners to go across and watch it when that happens.
I think it's going to be good. I mean, we acknowledge that we had some severe issues with audio quality on the first one. I'm really hopeful that we address that on this one. I think we will. But again, obviously it isn't completely done yet, so that is still TBD. But yeah, the aspiration is that we're going to be able to really improve on that front, and that we're also going to have a little bit of a extra few little production touches that are going to make the whole thing feel really like a really special event that we really want it to be, because I think that's the thing. We kind of look at it as a really mad project that we do to sort of sign off the year. And who knows, maybe next year we'll do more of them. Who knows? I mean, we've invested, the show has invested in the technology to bring this kind of stuff to life. So maybe we'll see more of that next year, although I guess you'll hear about that in the next episode. So yeah, it's exciting, mate. Quiz of the year. It's almost over. 2021. It's crazy, isn't it?
I know. Mad.
I know. It's a mad old thing. Also, you've got big plans for 2022, right, Phil? You're going to talk about that in the next episode?
Oh, we could do. Yeah. I'm sure once I finalise what I'm actually doing. Yeah.
You got to work it out still. It's a journey of discovery for
Exactly.
you too, right?
Yeah, I've been a bit busy this week, so
Well, it's the holidays, mate. It's the holidays. You started Christmas early.
Well, I haven't. I've spent the last few days working on my Hobby Vices project, which should have
look good, mate. Good looking box.
Should have arrived at someone's house as by the time we've recorded this. So yeah, I basically made a fancy dice box / project box because it's a bit too big for a dice box, I think. But yeah, because I'd made one years ago where I'd spray painted an Inquisition symbol and stained the wood nice dark color. So I did it this time with the wolf spear logo, but that logo has 3 colors to it, so I had to carefully layer up my stencils that I'd made to basically get all the colors, the white, white, black, and red. To get that logo in there. That took a day and a bit basically to make that, and then I printed. I created what do I call it? It's almost like a found artifact, but it's like a fictional piece. So I created a letter written as if it was from Lady Eleanor Greyhorn, my Inquisitor character, to said recipient as if they were a captain of the Wolf Spears. And I used a lot of the letter layouts that appeared within the Badab War book as inspiration. So I did that, kind of did some custom graphics and fake stamps like Seal of the Inquisition and classified stuff that I'd pulled off of the internet to make. And then I'd printed it out and then stained it with coffee so it looked all aged, carefully folded it, and then I'd made an Inquisitional stamp. So I then poured wax onto it and sealed it with this Inquisitional seal. Far much more effort than I actually needed to go to for this, but it was a fun little project. Like, I mean, that in itself just took a day to do. That one letter basically, or half a day, or a bit, 3/4 of a day, let's say.
Mate, it looks amazing. I'm looking at it right now on your gram, on the old Beyond the Tabletop gram. It looks. I hope that whatever you receive is equally as has as much effort.
Well, I mean, I hope so. It's weird. So I've yet to receive mine. However, I've had a £20 customs charge from Switzerland.
Oh,
so
wow, okay.
It might be that, I guess, because I don't remember buying anything from there. So who knows? We'll see what that will turn up tomorrow. So I'll see what that will actually be. It might be
mate,
some random purchase, and I didn't know where I was buying it from.
You do love to buy exotic items from Switzerland every now and again.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't? But no, mate. I think that's awesome. I think again. I mean, and you didn't. You obviously made that stuff, but you chucked in like some assault intercessors.
Oh yeah. So they wanted. So they gave me like a little wish list of things that they would like. One of them was that they're doing a wolf spear project. So I was like, what suitably wolf spear assault intercessors? So I bought them a box of that. I bought them 2 upgrade kits for the old and the Primaris Space Wolf one, because it's got loads of wolfy trinkets that they can add on, even if they won't be using the actual shoulder pads. I had the wolf spear transfer kit from my subscription to White Dwarf, so I threw that in there. That
in itself is a great.
Well, because I was like, there's some cool things on here that I would want myself, but I was like, I'll give that to them because obviously they kind of need it more than I do. So I will generously give that to them. Generous. When I was up at Warhammer World, I saw that they were selling red gobbo wrapping paper and socks, so I included those. And in the letter that my Inquisitor wrote, there was a little narrative about how the red gobbo's loitering around, so to be on careful, watch out for them. The person also mentioned that they were after some custom like spears for their wolf spears, obviously. So, and I had a bunch of the Stormcast Eternal ones, like the Vindicators, I think they were called, from my Thunderwolf project. So I clipped some of those off and I gave them some of my shields that I make from my store, because I've seen people paint them up as Space Wolves and they look quite Viking-ish depending on the artwork you did. And again, in my little narrative letter, suggests that they could be like for Vanguard Vets or Blade Guard or something. So I chucked all of that in basically, and that's what I sent off to them.
Well, I hope you don't just receive, some
smelly socks
off the shelf solution. It's like
yeah. I mean,
you're gonna get a McFarlane Space Marine action figure, and
so long as I don't just get 40k candles, I think that's the main thing.
Oh man, could you imagine? I think it's what a great troll move that would be, just to basically give you all the 40k
just
candles.
All of them, and that's it. Yeah, my house will be smelling nice.
Exactly, like Nurgle's Rot or whatever it was the selection. Anyway, there you go, guys. That's the end of episode 116. Thank you so much for listening. We deeply and intimately appreciate it. Do you like that, Phil?
Yes, I do. I'm intimately appreciative of you and our listeners.
Absolutely. But yeah, no, legitimately, thank you so much for listening, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure recording this episode, and we hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to consider supporting us on Patreon, you can. But if you don't want to, that's equally fine. Also, we do have merchandise, and maybe leave us a 5-star review.
I feel like
plug.
I feel like I need to do a t-shirt with the words "Space Vampires" on it after this episode.
I think so. I think that would be a good one. Christmas Space Vampires would probably be good. But again, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Thank you, everyone. If you're listening to this before Christmas or during the Christmas season, happy Christmas.
Merry
Goodbye.
Christmas and goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.